Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rocket Lasso Live, episode 15. Rocket Lasso Live is a Patreon-supported live stream I do every single Wednesday in order to answer questions that people have, mostly about Cinema 4D. And the questions come in the form of typed out questions, or usually links to a video on Instagram or Twitter or Patreon, some cool effect, some photo of some model that they are curious about how it might be made, and we just try and tackle it live and figure it out right in front of you. So we've already got some links going here, so we want to jump on in and do those. So let's share the screen right away. Click on the first link from Umbrella. Let's see what we got here. Popped open in the wrong window. Oh, it's a painting. Okay, so we got a still here. It's a beautiful rain painting from Mike Barr. Ooh, interesting. Now, the main question here is, what is it that you're interested about in this painting? And we've got the overall style, but a lot of that could end up being post effects. There's a lot of motion blur built in. Well, is there motion blur? I don't know. It feels like there's motion blur, but I guess there's not really much in the way of motion blur. There's just nice rainy reflections. You get all these streaks, but most of that would come across as a post effect, in my opinion, of some sort, or just a texture overlay of your final image, and just having everything be really fuzzy on the edges. So depending on what aspect you're interested about, okay, well, how would you render a scene in this style in Cinema 4D? Well, the basic idea, let's see if there's anything we can tackle here, because when it comes to all these really nice paint strokes after the fact, I think you just have to have that be a texture overlay once you're done doing the rest of the render. But there's not much information going on in the overall scene here. Everything ends up being pretty flat, and a lot is implied via strokes. So, I don't know, different elements of this just don't instantly read as a uniform style that we could apply to something. Let's see. Having said that, I mean, there's things we might be able to do with alphas on certain edges to get these transitions a little bit, and even little bits of geometry. So you know what, like, I'm not one to shy away from the challenge. Let's go and clone a couple of very simplified kind of car shapes here and see if we can get something that's a little bit like this. I'm not going to aim for the paint strokes, but it's more about just implying the form of these. So let's go ahead into Cinema, and we're going to do some really, really quick modeling here. I'm going to hit NB so we can see our edges here. And let's go ahead and give ourselves a couple of subdivisions on Y. Make this editable. We're going to make the most basic car possible. T for scale. I don't want to scale down on Z, so I'll turn that off. Scale this down. Grab this. Hit D for extrude. We're going to extrude upward. T for scale. Scale that in. Let's select all three of these. Push that down. Now we're going to pull this one. I'm going to hold down. Well, let's turn on the world axis, and then we can pull that straight backward. Actually, if that's actually that is the back, so we're going to pull that here. And this one can go a little more frontal. We're going to have to just keep doing this a couple of times until we get a shape we're a little bit happy with. Let's grab that point, those points, these points. I guess I'll just grab these front ones. We'll pull those forward a little bit. Maybe a good idea to put an edge along this side. So I'm going to hit UB on edge mode and hit MF and do a cut right down the middle. So we get this nice cut. And let's go ahead and select that. And I'm going to pull it forward. Just get that shape. If we wanted to, we can grab these side edges here. T for scale. We'll get a little dimension in there. We can select these two. T for scale. We'll scale those in a little bit. Just start getting the general shape of this going. This entire section is a little long. Let's go ahead and pull that further back. And yeah, that being flatter in the back looks nice. And then, I mean, we don't even really in the painting see much in the way of wheels. So why don't we put in some quick headlights in here, MF, and we'll put 2 cuts in there. And now I'm going to grab the stripe, UL. The only thing I'm worried about right now is headlights, so I'm going to go ahead and just scale these up. And let's go and put another subdivision, UB, MF, and let's do 2 cuts there. Do I want 2 cuts? I want one cut, and I want it. I want the scale to be 100%, and I want it to be up higher. And then I'm going to hit UB and do another cut, MF, hit apply. We want this one to be down lower. And then that gives us the shape of the headlight overall that I was looking for. And now I could like extrude inward or outward, or we can just do a selection there. We can grab this entire wall that way. And the opposite side. D for extrude. And I'm actually going to, well, we can do extrusion like this, but you're going to see how it pulls out in weird orientations. And I don't want to grab that window. So let's hit D, and we're going to do an extrusion of 0. And now I'm going to hit T for scale and scale them out. And now it will pull out without, it'll pull out without scaling up and down at the same time. So that's kind of useful. Yeah, and I mean, we could just keep going and going and making more and more detail on these. Really, we're just looking for one generic shape, but it's always fun to do a little bit of modeling on something overall. Now that we've introduced a little bit of detail on that, we can put a little curvature into that windshield. We could add, you know, like a bump on the front of the car. But a lot of these details we kind of want to disappear into the shape, into the final shape we're going to aim for. And I don't know to what degree we're going to be able to achieve that, but, you know, it's fun. And this is, you know, the way I'd go about modeling something. We're not even looking at reference here. I'm just tinkering as we go, pulling in and out different shapes. If we were, you know, we can, you know, and we can stop here at any point with the modeling, pull this up, get a little bit of curvature on the front of the car there. So, yeah, and that pretty much does it. We don't even see much in the way of wheels, but I will put something in for the wheel. Do we put a trough in for the wheel? Why not? I'm going to do another edge cut, MB, or UB. We'll do one there and there. MF, hit apply. We only need one cut for now. Actually, I guess we need 2. Yeah, we'll do that. And now I can grab. Yeah, that's already pretty well centered. So then I think I'd probably select that and that. Nope, not that one. That one. And this. And I can't think of what's the best way of doing that. I guess I'd actually probably get rid of those. Hit D for extrude, and I'm going to extrude these upward. And I'm going to delete those middle polygons. And then we get this shape overall. I don't want that either, so we'll delete that, delete that, delete that, and that. Delete. Now I get MD for closed polygon hole, and it's going to be pretty messy the way it closes it. Oop, look, we got a funky leftover polygon edge here, which is interesting. So I'm going to go and try and select. There is a polygon that's existing there. I'm not even sure why it got created. But you see it won't select. But if I turn off select only visible elements, it should get selected. Yeah, there we go. And now I can put the polygon hole in there properly. And now that we have those, and we could use our knife tool, K, and I could start cutting those closed. And we just have to make sure we view this from an angle that we can see both polygons. And then with any luck, that will actually make the cut. Actually, it didn't. I have found that this knife tool can be a little trickier to wrangle sometimes. So, you know what? If that's going to be a pain, you can always delete and hit ME, is it? Or what's that? I'm completely blanking on polygon pen tool. ME. So I can hold this edge while I'm on polygon mode and hold down control and then link it up there. And then we can just go MD and close polygon hole. MD, come on. Oh, that's interesting. Did I connect that wrong? Why is it doesn't seem to want to close? I'm kind of not something on this extrusion it didn't seem like. I'm going to optimize everything. So UO should optimize and close all of them. And now you can see it does close it. So something wasn't quite welded there. Some of the knife cuts I did might have created extra points there. But now you can see with those bad polygons hitting ME, I can just drag from one corner to another. And now we've established that part of the mesh. And now I can just close the polygon hole, close the polygon hole, just alternating between those two tools. So I know we're spending a little bit extra time on this, but you know, modeling is pretty fun, and I don't mind spending a few minutes in that. MD, close, and one last one. Now we could, at some point, if we were inclined to, make a like cut this thing in half and then put it into a symmetry object. I tend not to do that until I have to. I know we're doing a little redundant work by doing these mirrored, but different. Oh my goodness, look what I did. I didn't even notice I was doing that. I must have. It's something I say all the time. Actually, I'm kind of glad it happened. It sucks, but you know, I always talk about make sure when you use this tool, when you turn off select visible elements, make sure that you turn it back on again. Otherwise, you're going to make mistakes. And I just made those mistakes. So I was selecting straight through our mesh when I selected part of it, and I went and I killed a bunch of it. Now, even though I killed a bunch of it, I think these are really easy fixes. I can just remove the n-gons there, and that one is perfectly repaired. And then this thing, MD. I think all the polygons we need are still existing, so I can just hit knife and I can repair, 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 and repair. And there we go. It is, and then MD there. I was able to really easily fix that, but that is a problem with making sure you're not making sure the select tool was working properly when we did that. Let's see, moving on, I'm going to select that point and this one. I'm going to pull those further backward to get this little wheelbase space opened up a little bit more. I need to do the same thing over here. And over here, pull those forward. That's way up there. All right, cool. And I don't want to spend too much more on the modeling of this. I just want to get some nice polygons on it. So I'll select that stripe of points, this stripe of points. T for scale, make that bigger. Do the same thing up here. And here. T for scale. Nice and centered. We probably want to pull that further up into the wheelbase, but that's fine. I'm not going to worry about it. And if I was worried about edge flow, we could grab these points and start, you know, rounding things out. But I think that's probably far enough for our basic bit of car here. And then I guess we could just throw in some wheels. So that is just going to be a cloner with a cylinder put inside. We're going to set that to grid. Let's set it to 2 by 2 by 1. I believe, and let's change our orientation to X plus and T for scale. Change the height. There we go, the most basic of wheels possible. So there we go, just a little something completely from scratch. Let's go ahead and grab our cloner object, scale those to be in the proper position approximately. There we go. Nice kind of parametric wheels in there. Lovely. Look at that. I'll take it. All right, so now let's see if we can kind of use this as a way of generating that more interesting looking overall geometry that we're seeing in this painting here. So let's save this first, just in case. Episode 15. Renders. Oops, sorry, went to the wrong one. Scene files. This is number 1A. Car painting, I guess. Oh, actually, that's a bad way of saying it. Paint style. Car painting would sound like we're doing a car paint. Okay, so there's our very, very, very basic model of a car, and we're going to end up cloning it. So let's go ahead and put that into a null. But before we clone it, let's go and see if we can get some style going on this. And I kind of have no idea where I'm going to go with this. Now, one of my thoughts is that we actually kind of want to mess up our overall geometry. We didn't super subdivide this thing in a very even way. And in fact, especially if we're going for that type of paint quality, we would want to model things in a way. You know, I'm going to really lower our point count on these wheels. And if we were keeping things very even, I might put a couple extra cuts in here. So UB on edge mode, and we'll say MF, and then do 2 cuts in there. So everything's closer in polygon size. So now we've got something like that. My thought would be is adding in some imperfections. And I really enjoy the process of doing this. I'm not sure at what stage we're going to do it. So, you know what? I'm going to clone a couple of cars. So we've always got that in our mind. Let's make a grid. Let's just make a line of cars, actually. And I guess we can just have them lined up for right now. No, that's not true. I want to push them backward. So, because they're going to be kind of like that. So let's keep in mind this type of context. So if we're going to be doing a lot of displacement, I think is going to be one of the base things we're doing. And we're going to have 2 different types of displacement. Ones that are really big and bold, and then tinier ones to add smaller imperfections. So let's set up a couple of basic things first. Let's go ahead and make a very basic material here. And I'm going to use the color channel, but I'm going to, should we do it? There's a lot of different ways of making a gradient is what we're going to be creating here. So we could project a gradient from the top down, which might be cool, but we could also do a fall off of some sort. We could also do a proximal with a really big fall off. And I kind of like the idea of doing a proximal because we could move that around and have it be very independent, and it's not projection mapping based, like the different orientations our material are applied. That wouldn't be the variable here. So I'm going to do it that way. Let's make a null. I'm going to just call this null prox for our proximal, and inside of our color channel, which we will make a lot fancier later, we're just going to make a proximal. Let's drop in the proximal, and that should colorize everything. And right now our prox null is pretty much right here in the front. I'm going to move it even a little further. And if I rendered right now, we're not really going to see much of anything because the material hasn't been applied. But if I do that, we're not going to see anything. But if I make my end distance 1000, we'll probably see something. Actually, it's quite a bit. You can see how we're fading through the cars from that distance. I'm going to go ahead and make it 2000, so it's going to be significantly stronger, but we'll be able to remap it. And you know, just for fun, let's make a couple extra of the cars. So we should see that still fade off into the distance. We're going to change our mode from linear to smooth. I think that's, yeah, it's going to look a little nicer as that fades back in space. And now we have the ability to feed this into a colorizer and colorize that gradient it to be exactly whatever we want it to be. So I want it to be black and white, and I want it to be a little bit darker gray in the foreground and lighter gray as it goes back. It tends to, yeah, as you tend to head for the atmosphere with distance, it tends to fade to gray. So let's see, I think I did that backwards. I had it correct at the beginning. So now you can see we're fading from one gray to a darker gray. And what I'm going to do here is get rid of, well, we got Phong tags right now. I'm not super worried about them. I'm going to turn off the angle limit, so it's really trying to smooth those out. But I am going to put on a compositing tag. Let's put a Cinema 4D compositing tag. I'm going to say composite background. And what that should mean is these all now look completely flat. The only thing that we can tell is their distance being separated as they travel back in space. So instantly that's going to be doing a lot for making these cars, you know, they feel less 3D automatically. So that's one really basic thing. Let's just call this one car. I'm going to put the word letter F and then car because the names are really short here, and I want F for our purposes of this scene file is going to stand for fade. So these cars are fading out. And then let's go ahead and make ourselves the headlight, which seems like an important variable here. Let's go ahead and just grab our two headlights, and I'm going to say create a selection tag. Set selection, and I'm just going to call it light. And let's make another material. And this material we're going to have be luminant white. And if we look at our painting reference, they're a little bit yellow, so why not add in a little bit of yellow in there? So those should stand out quite a bit. Let's just call that one light. I don't know how many materials we're going to make, so let's keep it organized. And I'm going to throw that material up here on top, and it will still be limited to that light selection tag as long as all the material's on the same level. So now as they fade back, you can see that that is also working quite well. If we look at our painting, the lights do not fade as they go, so we'll leave that one as it is. All right, so we've got this kind of perfect line of cars traveling backward. We're not at the stage where I want to start adding in these kind of imperfections, but we could go and make a random effector here, and they're just going to be a little bit more randomly forward and backward and left and right. So, you know, just so they're not so perfectly lined up, and now we can see them fading back. So, okay, just a little something there. And now what I'd like to do is start doing a little deformation on this. So let's create some big deformation. I'm going to create a displacer, and let's put that on. And this displacer, I want to start displacing our cars, and it can be, we can do it in a uniform way. Let's see what this does. I'm going to create a noise. Now you're going to see we're just going to get all this deformation. Now you're going to see that every car has the same deformation. You can see right there we got a big dent in the top of the windshield, and there, and there, and there. They're all identical. It's getting copied after the fact. Now that's probably to do with each of these being, it's being filtered down on each geometry, and it's looking at their local space. What we might be able to do is put this into a connect object. Yeah, and you see as soon as I put the cars into this connect, we don't even need this well, they're all being connected And now their local coordinates have changed to this more global coordinate of the connect object. So now all the displacements are slightly varied as it travels through. So we just add down that one little level of imperfection onto the way these are being distorted. But right now the noise is really small, so we see no uniformity through them. So there we go. By jumping up to 1,000, there's a little bit more uniformity through them. So you just get these little imperfections where these aren't straight lines perfectly anymore. I'm going to go to our wheels, and I'm going to go, actually, I guess I'll just put that wheel directly into a connect, and that will weld those shut, and now they can be deformed better. But now you can see that our cars, even as low poly as they are, you can see that now they're not this perfect thing. So now we get, I don't know, you just get this really nice implied imperfection. There's something I really like about that kind of stuff. So that's at this big global level, based on the overall scale here. But where I start wanting to push things is to start heavily subdividing this and adding in some more minor imperfections as well. So let me think. There's a lot of different ways we can do this. We could do some sub-poly. I want to maintain the overall shape that we have here. So it makes me inclined to want to put this entire thing into a... And I'm not sure at what point the materials won't filter through, so that's another thing we gotta keep in mind. Because what I'd like to do is make a simulate cloth surface and put that inside there. I think that might, no, it didn't kill off the materials. But what's great about these subdivisions is it doesn't change the shape of the car. It just makes them sharper. And now we've got all these extra subdivisions, but the silhouette should still pretty much be identical. And that's up on this new level. And that means we can put a displacer at that level. And this is essentially happening after this one is calculated first because it's deeper down in the hierarchy. And then it gets subdivided in its already deformed state. And then we have a new subdivision here. And this one, I'm going to make it, let's drop it back down to 100. And now we're going to get these tinier little bumps. So we're getting these more detailed imperfections. Now that one's pushing pretty far. I don't want to go that far with it. So let's go ahead and start pulling that back. We can go to something like 2, and now we get our bigger strokes, but then we can get some tinier, smaller imperfections, which is where I'd like to kind of start getting the streaks going. But having done this particular one, I don't think that looks great. Let's go ahead and add on another subdivision. And let's go into our noise and try changing our noise type to something a little crazier. Let's try something real crazy like a Luca. You can't go crazier than that. That's going to add a lot of imperfection all over the place. But if we scale it up, we're going to get areas of a lot of crazy detail and then chilled out areas. And that might add in some interesting variation as it goes through. And I like that a little bit more. So that's interesting. Now, a lot of this we're going to want to have sort of disappearing into the ground. It ends up being a little tricky. Let's go ahead and make a floor. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a floor here. We're going to pull this down until it's about sitting there. Some of the cars might be hovering because of the displacement. But let's go ahead and put the same overall material on there. So these should fade out along the ground as well. Interestingly... Oh, I don't have the compositing tag. That would do it. It's like, that's weird. There we go. So now you can see they're just kind of fading into the ground as they travel backwards. So this is the fade out of the car, but I think that we actually do want the road to pop out a little bit. Let's go ahead and make a copy of this. And this one is going to be fade road. And so what we want this to do is be pretty similar. I'm going to drag this over, and we want this to be pretty similar, but not identical. So I'm going to put this into a layer shader, and let's go ahead and create a, let's make a just color shader. I'm going to make it black. We have a black color shader on there, and I'm going to have it filter through just a little bit. So that's going to make it just a little bit darker at any given point. Oh, and we have to apply it. Replace what it currently was. So this is going to be very similar to the car, but it should be just a little bit darker. Is it darker? Yeah, it's darker. I mean, it's almost like some optical illusions going where it's hard to tell that it's getting darker, but it is. One of the problems with doing the proximal method is I can't if I change it on one, it doesn't change it on all of them. And I really wish that we could do this with the new shaders, but I don't think we're in a good situation to do that. I'm going to go ahead and increase this to 4,000, but we also have to do it on the other proximal. And whatever we go to, we should probably kind of lock it in. I'm just not sure where we're going to layer it up eventually. But yeah, we can get those fading back. And honestly, let's see, we might be able to tinker a little bit. Let's go ahead and I'm going to turn on reflection on here. And I'm going to remove that one and add a GGX. And we're just going to get this nice reflection on it. And let's see what that does. I'm kind of curious what it's going to give us. Oh, look at that. That's not too bad. We're going to see the cars reflected in it overall. And something that might be neat is making this one quite dark. So we're going to make it really dark. And most of that detail is just going to come from the reflection of the car poking up. Let's go ahead and add in a bump on this one. And this nice big bump should just add in a bunch of nice imperfections in that. Now, we don't want to go too far because you see this is going to start looking like water. Definitely don't want that. So where this might get interesting would be doing some frontal projections. I'm not sure if that's a good idea or not, but let's see what happens. I'm going to change this material to be a frontal projection. So it's going to project the material frontally, but this noise is a 3D noise, so that won't have any effect. But if we change it to a 2D noise, then now it can be frontally projected. And now you can see we get this much bigger overall effect. And now we have the ability to do things like stretch it horizontally. So we have X, Y, and Z. I'm going to grab Y and make it smaller. So we're going to get more in the way of horizontal lines. And then we can go into our bump, and I'm going to chill those out quite a bit. Let's go down to like 5%. And the hope is that we can start getting the overall effect of the car. And we might have to go quite low on this. Start getting the effect where we see the car, but just get these little wobbles traveling back and forth. So that's actually working pretty well. Now, we're getting a perfect reflection of these cars because they are composited. They're set to composite background. It's a little bit of a challenge with that because those should really be reflecting darker, and instead they're reflecting very light. They're reflecting the lighter part above, and that is a bit tricky. So that makes me want to change, or maybe multiply, put some sort of additional material on part of the car here where we can add in under the color channel. I'm going to put that into a layer, and inside of here, because we're already faking tons of things here, but I'm going to add a fall off here. So let's go to effects, fall off, and now you can see that this rainbow gradient is going to take over, and anything on the top of the car is going to be yellow, anything on the bottom of the car is going to be black, which is similar to what we want. I'm going to want it to be black on the bottom, and I want it to be white up on the top. And I'm going to multiply that on top of everything else we were doing. So now the bottoms of the car should be black. So now when they're reflecting, wow, that really brings a lot of detail back in, doesn't it? Because of all the bumps that we're doing, that is blatantly giving us tons of the detail back in there that I didn't want to have happen. I just wanted to see the bottom part be dark. But yeah, I guess that doesn't work if we have all this extra detail added on top of it. So yeah, that fall off part did not work. We could, right now we're composite background, we could make a light potentially in the sky. If I move a light way up in the air and I turn on a soft shadow, these are a compositing background, which means they still cast shadow. So if we render that, then the bottom parts I would hope could be dark still. It's got a shadow. I'm going to put it on hard shadow because you can't always trust the soft ones. And yeah, it's not, I mean, it's adding definition back in the cars, but we can avoid that by going to its compositing tag and saying, I'm going to move that up a layer, by saying don't self shadow. So it's not going to put shadow on itself, but it will be darker on the bottom for the reflection. I mean, honestly, I don't know. It's not it's interesting, but it's not exactly what I want. I also don't want this floor to receive shadow. I don't want there to be shadow from there. I just want the pure reflection of the car. And it's kind of cool the way that, I mean, that's looking all right already. I like this fade out here. That's working well. So yeah, interesting. And adding those little imperfections around is fun. And then we've got like this nice blur going. I might even be inclined on that kind of thing to not have it be a purlin noise. We can change that to being, oh, this one's still noise. That's interesting. They start calling it purlin in other places. We can go to something like Naki. And then, yeah, so we can get some more imperfection. Let's go ahead and make that a little bit bigger. So we're just going to see, yeah, more interesting waviness happening on there. The bump could probably be stronger. Don't want to blow it out, but yeah, just those little streaks happening. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that's interesting. you can start putting stuff in the background. I don't want to, there's a lot of parts that we're not going to spend much time on, but I don't know how far you'd even have to go on this, where you just kind of start working with these very, very basic shapes or implying just a little bit of light on certain parts of it. Streaking these the way we did is definitely, it casts all that definition on it, which is not something I wanted. But if we were to take, this and then put a couple buildings in the background that have that same fall off, and we make a environment fog, so we can enable some fog here, and let's see. Yeah, so those can start fading out, but let's fade out to a darker gray. So we can let these start fading out as well. Then you go and you create this kind of thing where it's more of like a two-dimensional series of images. And I feel like it wouldn't be that difficult to then take this and bring it into Photoshop and overlay some sort of paint stroke on top of it. Not that cloner. Let's make a couple extra cars into the background. The fog will eventually make those disappear, but yeah, we can make... Oops, hit render twice. Those will keep on fading into the background. And I think that gives us a reasonable version of the way that these cars look. Now, we can always push things further. You can add more imperfections. The way we use these displacers are just really forward ways of using displacers. We could have done a frontal projection that had things being streaked left and right in a more distinct way. If we want to push this effect, well, I don't want to push the effect more, but we can make a duplicate of this entire rig. And actually, it's all working pretty well there. So instead of duplicating the entire rig, we could just make a copy of the cloner, and we'll push this one. We'll pull it over here. With all the subdivisions I'm adding in, it does add in quite a bit of calculation time there. You can see as I'm dragging. At any point, I could bake these down, and they obviously run way quicker. Come on, further over. And I can just take this one and tell it to flip the cars around. So I can go transform, flip the cars 180. Let's see if that works. Yes, no? Oh, yeah, okay, it took a second. But, well, that's a copy of the car, but we can go and make this car be an instance. Hold down Alt as it's created, so now it's just made an instance, delete that car, and then tell it to reference the original. Oh, that's the body of the car. Shouldn't have done that. I'm going to undo. This car, I'm going to hit, that's an instance. Delete the child, replace it with the other car, so now we only ever have to update one car. And now we definitely want to turn off that. That should speed everything up a lot. And now I can go and grab, make a camera so I don't lose the position. We can go into the back and select the rear headlights. Doop, doop. And let's make another selection tag. Rear lights. Duplicate our light here. Rename it rear lights. Make it red. Very red. And we'll apply that material as well and limit that one. So now we get the red light. So now if we go back to our original camera and we turn that on, then we should have two different sets of cars going forward and backward. And we should be able to hit render on that. And then you can see all of those be generated. And we can get the red lights fading as well. The way they're reflecting in the ground, it would probably be a cool idea to make these even brighter. So I can go into the luminance and say, make these 500 times as bright. And now they might end up being a little too bright. We gotta be really careful because like this red, the redder it is, the better it's gonna work. But it's gonna reflect very brightly in the ground now that they're 5 times as bright. So you can see here that they reflect in the ground and they get this really big, nice blown out look. So that kind of thing can be really cool. We'd want to increase our, sampling on the ground, of course. I'm trying to think of other things we can do in cinema to start emulating a lot of the effect, or pushing some of it further. Because, especially in the painting, you can see that we get those little glows around the edge of the headlights. That is not, we could put glows on there, but I guess technically we could. We could just put a glow on there. How often do you turn on glow anymore? So I feel like when I first was using cinema, I would do that all the time. But I'm going to turn off inner strength. We're going to do an outer strength of 100%. And we have a radius of 10. I'm not sure how big that is. Let's just hit render. And it goes, and then boop, get the glow around it. I mean, it's not as much of a stroke as I would like it to be. Having said that, we could. Well, can you do that? I was planning on putting some sketch and tune on here at some point, but the geometry the way we did it actually worked really well. And sketch and tune is not going to add imperfections on the edges of the car in the same way. I don't know. There's so many weird and odd, fun things we could tackle adding onto the overall effect. Something I've been thinking that might be interesting is inside of our car material, we could go into the alpha and put a really heavy go into a Fresnel material and invert that so it's going to be more transparent on the edges, which is going to make it a little bit fuzzier. And now that might look really weird with the way we subdivided with all these little noises and imperfections, but I just want to see what that does. And yeah, so actually it's not bad. You can see that it's introducing on certain edges like this little bits of imperfection where you can kind of see through it a little bit. So along those lines, I would make sure that this is pretty dang solid most of the way through. But then on some of these edges, it can definitely poke in. And then based on our imperfect geometry, I guess we want to be pretty subtle with that. Or am I going the wrong way? Oh, apparently white is solid and black is transparent. We can pull those in just a little bit of transition. And let's see if that, you gotta be careful because like here, it could do that curvature. Yeah, it can be a little weird, but yeah, it can give us this hint on the edges. Yeah, it's just something to try, but kind of cool. Pushing it further, but yeah, I mean, I like the fuzziness here, but then we're seeing the rear side of the headlights by kind of like where one car can bleed a little bit through the other one. I don't know. There's a lot of weird things we can do. Let me think if there are other specific things, because like I feel like after you get the basic color this way, I mean, I guess we should probably even take this into Photoshop just for a moment. And this isn't very, obviously we didn't push it very far. We could have made tons of buildings, but we already spent a lot of time on this one. But if we were to take this shape, I'm just gonna take a screenshot of it. Let's go into Photoshop, make a new file, and we paste in something basic like that. Like our ability to go through and begin adding in our different layers, so we can go into curves. I want to start with levels maybe, and let's just kind of twist our midpoint around, maybe make everything a little bit darker, and then we can make a we could colorize. It would probably be a good idea. We could take this entire layer, duplicate it, and then colorize it. So let's see, how do we gradient map something? I'm completely blanking. Gradient mapping, is that just a setting we click on? Yeah, gradient map. So we can fade this to blue is what I'd like to do. Let's see. Let's have the darker parts go and fade to a nice desaturated blue like that. Yeah, there we go. Look at that. And if we wanted, we can make the front part a little warm, but I mean, we're already in a cool picture, so warm is a relative thing. Yeah, just something like that. So we do something there. And then we can, I don't know, overlay or multiply. I do like you get the little preview now as you can just scrub through them. Screen, but we can say, well, we were going to lose the color, but we can, I'm not sure actually what the best way, that would probably be a good idea to just gradient map the final thing and then pull out the colors. But I do like adding in that fog layer like that. But, let's see, what's the best way to select those? I don't, wand. I'm hitting W, but it doesn't want to go to the wand tool when I hit W, so thanks for that. I'm going to, let's see if we can, well, select just those headlights. I guess it's going to select all the reflections as well. I guess that makes sense. These red ones got obliterated by our gradient map, which makes sense. Oh, what we should do is select them. Yeah, there we go. We'll just select them in the original image, and then we can go over here and mask them out. I'm just going to hit delete. There we go. Those are back again now. Alrighty. And now I would probably flatten the entire image if I hit, what is it, Alt Command Shift E. Yeah, I got it right. What a shortcut. Alt Command Shift E, and you'll duplicate your entire layer and be flat on top. And as much as I don't like just going into filters, if we jump into our filter gallery and do some sort of distortion here, and really I don't want, well, yes, even something like this, you know, going through and getting some very basic distortion going. A better map would be, you know, kind of doing a distortion based on the image we bring in, but like adding in this little bit of imperfection can be fun. We could go and do a smart filter or a smart blur, which, let's see, yeah, I do like the way those tend to look on certain parts. Let's see if we get to work. Yeah, look at that. So we can, if we pull that up enough, we start getting this kind of splotchy, patchy look, and it's going to fix those. Made everything look a little bit fuzzy, but we could probably sharpen that up if we wanted to. But that was really nice for the way the headlights were reflecting. I like those kind of strokes. And then I don't have any specific resource here, but if we just go to Google image search, paint texture, and let's go to images, and let's go to settings, or do we click more? Tools. Usage rights, labeled for reuse with modification. And now let's just see if we can get something blatantly kind of paint strokes. Paint strokes. I'm trying to find something indistinct. A lot of these are very oriented in a particular direction. That one's okay, a little small. That might work. It's a little small, but let's just copy that image, and I'm going to paste it in here. Actually, it's a little big. Shrink that down, and then we would desaturate it, and then start overlaying it. Where am I going? Overlay, and then yeah. So just overlay that on top really strongly. And then if we were to distort it by those same paint strokes, I think that probably would go a long way. So it just starts going to where you want to start treating your Cinema 4D file in a, and this is, you know, this is not amazing by any means, but if we were to, how do you even do that? How do you distort an image? Can you distort an image in Photoshop? Like in After Effects where you distort something. So if we distort, displace, okay. How is it? Oh, we have to go find a displacement field, which is a different file. Okay, interesting. I'm not going to bother saving that or doing that right now. But yeah, if we were to distort it by the paint strokes, and I think they'd follow along those curves a little bit more, and you start treating things like a two-dimensional image a little bit, and getting those overlays. We can pull in different layers and blur things, and I don't know. But I think that's about as far as I'm going to attempt to push that one. Doing more distortions on things. The smart blur was okay. I did like that. Yeah, the strokes that we got here that reintroduces a little bit of detail, makes those imperfections, but a little bit sharper as well. I don't know. It takes an image input, not a layer input. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh yeah, everybody was saying the same stuff in the chat that I was just saying. Yeah, I guess we can try that real quick. Let's just make this layer normal, and we'll save that. It said it was looking for a Photoshop document, but let's say if we just save that in the scene files, texture folder, paint, and then did it, what? Oh, there, save it. And then we can put that back to overlay, but now we can hide that, go to this layer, and let's see if we can get the distort to work. I'm just curious because I haven't done it before. So we'll make a distort. I don't know how far we want to go, so let's say 25 by 25. Repeat edge pixels, that's fine. And then we say, what's it doing? Oop. Oh, look, Photoshop crashed. Nice. Don't send. Wow, okay, thanks, Photoshop. Okay, well, that that died. So I guess we'll just stop that part there, but we got the Cinema 4D stuff. Yeah, unusual for us to crash Photoshop. I wasn't even doing anything that crazy. Let's see. But yeah, anyway, that's... There's additional things you can do on so many levels. I'm trying to think if there's anything really cool we could just kind of mention on top of what we're doing here already, which, you know, I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's not surprising that we, you know, if we wanted the headlights to behave in a particular way, we'd have to build a rig like that. The rig that specifically is pulling out light and behaving in a different way, because in this painting, everything was a stroke, everything was painted. So you're not going to get that for free with a single technique. So this nice heavy fog and fall off is a good way of us getting these overall shapes. And you can even picture like this big cluster of trees. That could just be a single shape or a blob or a series of spheres traveling back in space. And then just have one color on it and they just slowly fade away in the fog. Like that would work really well. But let's jump on the next question. If you put a link in earlier, if you put it again, would be great. I'm going to scroll back up, and I think Pro Tools had a question, but everybody get more questions going on in there. I know with no Instagram up today, it gets a little tougher to find fun little ones, but let's see if this Pro Tools link leads us anywhere interesting. Hopefully, let's see, well, we already got some funkiness going here. I don't know what that is. Let's see if there's anything underneath that that's interesting. I'm not sure what your question was, and I don't trust this link, so we're just going away from that one. Picaro. It's a filmed piece, but you'd be interested in what I'd make just inspired by this. Interesting. Did we see this one before? Aurora by Russ Kazanov. And I think we might have done some bubbly textures based off of some part of this one in the past. But you're saying that here he filmed this. This is all manipulated footage, probably of soap bubbles and or oil. Whoa. Some pretty cool funky things in here though. Yeah, look at that crazy stuff. You could probably get that, you know, potentially get that effect just by like having this thing and then blowing on that part as it goes. Now, you're just saying anything I might be inspired by on this overall. Not so sure about that one. That was weird. Yeah, because it's just another bubble. So it's on the surface and goes through really shallow depth of field. I mean, I don't want to recreate it. I mean, honestly, it's super cool, but not much is jumping out at me as far as something I'd want to try and tackle. A lot of this crazy, organic-y, blobby stuff are not things we can do very well. Almost get some fractal type things going here. But yeah, the way these all line up and do what they're doing, I do not have a fundamental understanding of that type of behavior. I'd have to research it a bunch. Ooh, look at that. I'm not even sure what we're seeing there. Bloop, 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 bloop. Wow, that's crazy. But yeah, I mean, we're just not in a good position that we could do anything with these. Like, these would be really, really detailed liquid simulations if we were building it realistically. but the ability to have like one blob, like, see what that one just did? You see how those two bubbles merge together? We don't have any way to do that. I mean, these are black, so we could just have them blob onto each other automatically, but there's no way to do that in cinema as we stand. It would all be manual rigs to fake it. So that's pretty tricky. And yeah, these rainbows. I mean, it's beautiful, don't get me wrong, but I'm not seeing anything that wouldn't be insanely time consuming for us to try and tackle, as cool as it is. If we had mocap, we could. If we had mocap, we could do this effect, but we don't have mocap. So I'm worried about what we might see here. Whoa, look at that. Well, this just looks like some fun type of After Effects type project where if you're on green, you don't do mocap, you just film yourself on presumably a green screen. Although because this background's not changing, you probably extract yourself from it fairly easily. And then you can see there's a little bit of motion still in it, but it just looks like he's pausing himself and taking a still frame at any given moment. And then he's using the character tool to animate a little bit of motion in there, and he's just creating more and more of these and masking himself out in the back. It's really cool, but I don't see I don't see anything we'd be doing specifically there in cinema. Mr. Matt Dog is saying that we could look at the animated thin film effect, and yes, that's true, and that's what in either that piece or in a very, very similar piece a couple of weeks ago, that same question was asked about thin film, and we tinkered with it a little bit, but we kind of quickly hit limitations on it. And we would just end up doing the exact same thing again. I don't think it's not very interesting or challenging to me because I just don't know a direction it can go, and I don't think it makes for a good stream question. Not that there isn't fun stuff in there, but it's tricky. Let's see. Luminetrix is asking about these caustics that are being cast around a room without using real caustics because caustics, of course, take a long time. And you're saying it's pretty loud, so let's turn off the audio. What do we got here? Well, this is from Fabrice Borelli, and it looks like a tutorial that they're doing something in some piece of software. Blade Runner, they're in Unreal Engine, and they're doing all these crazy cool caustics on the walls. You know what? I don't think that is necessarily all that difficult for us to do a fake version of that. So yeah, this is pretty cool. So, and this is a tutorial in Unreal Engine on making these caustic effects, and presumably fake because it would take too long to calculate for real. So let's see if we can get, I should not have closed that. I'll have to pull those back. Give me 1 second. I need those links for later, and I closed the window. So let me pull those back. There we go. Whoops. All right, and let's go ahead and give that scene file a save, open up a new one, and let's give ourselves a little bit of geometry. So the basic idea they have is they've got some sort of room, and why don't we even just do it that way? Let's make a little room here. I'm going to extrude that out. Let's extrude that out. Let's grab this overall shape and hit D for extrude, and then let's get some interesting angles on here. So I'm going to delete those, and then let's hit ME for polygon pen tool and link those together, and we'll link those together and hit MD and close that polygon hole. And let's hit D for extrude and then hit extrude that out. Oops. D for extrude those out, and then we're kind of getting a little bit of interesting internal geometry that we can work from. Let's D for extrude, pull that out, and then we'll just do this last one like that. D for extrude. There we go. So that's going to be our corner of a room, just with a little bit of interesting geometry going. And then we would have our pool, which I guess we can leave on the ground. I'll move everything up into the air. Go to object mode, grab the walls, pull that up, and we'll make our water effect nice and big. And just poke that down a little bit. All right, so pretty straightforward. Let's delete our Fong tag so we get that nice geometry here. Let's get a camera angle. That should work pretty well. Let's do a little bit zoomed out. We'll get pretty near the ground. That's a little bit more open-ended, but you know what? That's fine. We will do that is our angle, and let's save our scene file right away before we forget. Number 2. Caustic fake. Okay, so let's make a basic material here, and I don't have any sort of wood material or anything prepared. I would like to make it a nice wood material there. We can't. I just want something because this isn't what the question's about. So I'm just going to go to the old Grayscale Gorilla wood texture kit. And Chad's new everyday material collection are amazing, but I'm going to go ahead and just grab one of these old ones because these will work in physical. And let's go ahead and apply it to the walls, and I'm going to set it to as simple as can be. How did my interface get so scaled up? I'm sure I did it, but let's go to cubic, and let's go and chill out our bump really far. And, you know, we don't need any reflection. There we go. Just nice soft wood. Yeah, I kind of like these horizontal lines. That looks nice. Okay, so now we make a brand new material, and this material is just going to be luminance, full-on luminance. But then we're going to do a bunch of stuff with alphas. So let's go into an alpha channel, and we're going to make a noise. And in the noise, let's go and put a slightly more complicated noise, but something not too crazy. So we're going to do knocky, but I'm going to knock the octaves way back, so we get something like that. And then I'm going to feed that into a distorter. So let's go ahead and add it into a distorter. And I like using this distorter a lot better than the one inside the layers, the layer shader. But in any case, let's keep this simple. I'm going to go ahead and put that in, and it's really difficult to see the alpha here, so I'm going to put it onto a plane, and man, that is not much easier to see. So I'm going to temporarily put this distorter into the luminance channel so we can actually see what we're doing here. Not much clearer. Thank you very much. Let's go ahead and just push this distortion a whole bunch. I'm going to throw this onto the walls, and let's see what insanity we get. Okay, so that's what we're seeing right away. Let's go ahead and scale up the noise that we're feeding in as our distorter. Now we get something more like that. So it's kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and start pulling back on our warp amount. There we go, something like that. And I wonder if this secondary noise, if we should be running something a little messier as well in there. So another knocky with only one distortion. And I'm hoping that the distortion is going to be the overall effect that gives us the best look here, because I would then take this entire material, put that into maybe a colorizer for keeping it simple, and let's go ahead and make this black to white, and pull up the white a whole bunch, and then we're just left with this black, something like that. Not the best looking. I've accidentally made nice looking caustics with these types of techniques, but it could be like stuff could be really sensitive, the type of stuff we feed in. Like maybe this one shouldn't be knocky, maybe this one should be the original basic noise, and then if we distort it properly, and man, we're just blowing it out now. If we distort that, we're going to get much better looking waves, and that by itself already looks pretty neat. Not exactly what I was looking for. And then you get actually one of the nice looking ones is Cronal, if that's the way you say it. But that one just looks good by itself, not necessarily if you're applying it to other ones. And then also there's like gaseous, which might be pretty good. But now we're layering up distortion. Stuff can get weird. All right, well, that's interesting. Look at that. Here's knocky. Look how knocky looks. And then let's change it over to Cronal. Look, it's almost the exact same pattern. The two of them must be heavily based off of each other, which is interesting. So that gets a, I don't know. That's, I feel like we're losing the thread a little bit here. I want to keep it really simple. What's the, I mean, this is the technique I want. I just wanted a nicer looking caustic. I mean, to be perfectly honest, like that, well, using these procedural shaders would be the best way to generate it. Let me look at the reference again real quick. It's just several of them. I honestly, I feel like I might be overthinking this a little bit. Let's just put the same noise in two places, and now we're going to get something like that, which isn't bad. And now let's start peaking that up a little bit. And the scale, different scales might go a long way. So does one want to be smaller than the other? That's not horrible. Make that one bigger, and then make this one bigger. And then just how much are we distorting? If we distort a lot, we're going to get very distinct, but if we start pulling back, we're going to get simpler. Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and just move forward kind of conceptually. I'm not getting great looking caustics there, and we could just go and Google an image of caustics, just render out, or even yourself, render out one nice one, or render out, yeah, there's just, you could probably just get some nice source of one. But now we have an alpha channel that's feeding them out. So based on the alpha here, we can start pulling back. It looks like we need more darkness here. So we're going to end up with something like that. It starts getting really surprised at the strength of this. It looks like we'd probably want to make this be even lighter. Or, oh, apparently killing off the darkness there. That's a little better. Yeah, even here, I'm clicking around so many arbitrary settings. That's, I mean, this is the best we've gotten so far. I'm clicking around so quickly on so many arbitrary settings that I might be losing you if you're watching, trying to follow along. It's really just trying to find a combination of those that work. But now, I know I should have done this right away, but we want to make these both two-dimensional noises. And now we've got that two-dimensional noise, and it's going to apply all weird. But the thought is then, let's make a camera, and then we'll make this material apply based on camera mapping. And now wherever we, I'm going to make a second camera, so that's our, I'll move that one down here. That's our default camera. So this one, wherever this goes, is how that water is being reflected. So then you take this and you make it the source down here. I'm going to hide the floor. So we could project from this angle on that one. Let's go back to our original one and see what that looks like. Oh, and we should probably set the camera in there. So now you see how we get this really nice stretching going on as it's projecting from that angle. And then you just start doing a series of those where we can copy and paste our camera, link to the second one, and now we go to become that camera, and we'll go over here. And it's like a different light would be kind of reflecting off the ground and casting another one up onto the walls like that. Go back to our original camera, and now we've got two different layers of it casting in two different ways. And if we animated that noise would be calculating insanely fast. As we are set up right now, they're pretty bright. They're showing up very strongly. The scale's a little funky. A million things I prefer to change on here. I mean, I've literally done this before, but I might have taken images of caustics or rendered my own. But I swear I've gotten really nice noise materials to combine and do it. We could just spend a bunch of time trying to make a really nice looking caustic material. And I really feel like the key on that would be using a distort. But we can feed in two different types of materials, and we have different strengths of the distortion and different ways we let this kind of snake through. It turns pretty crazy. There's a lot of potential combinations, and there's a lot of like neat looking ones, like stuple or stuple. I'm not sure you'd want to pronounce that one, but feeding that one in, like that one, I think would create some really nice waves. But we might need the entire range of it to feed through, and it just gets nuts. It gets crazy, everybody. Yeah, we just don't have a nice looking caustic, but I think that just picking some different cameras to project it in different angles would go a really, really long way to faking that overall effect. Let me think if there's anything useful I have to say about it, because I'm not happy with the way the concepts here are solid, I think, but the final look here is pretty awful. I mean, obviously we don't have good lighting on this overall, but these caustics are not convincing me. And there's also, you gotta keep in mind that this isn't just supposed to be a straight up light projecting onto a surface here, because we're just saying like, hey, just apply this luminant material on there. Really, it should be, it's same material, but with this set to overlay or to screen, well, not screen, but some sort of overlay I feel like would be where that would pull out like a linear burn or something, so they could be interacting with the surface of the material underneath it. Or you just render caustics for real. Let it take 2 years to render a frame. Yeah, okay. Yeah, we'll stop that one there. I'd like to hit another question or two for sure, but let's see what we got. Drake has a question. A good one from a great artist. The first picture. Let's see what we got. Oh, look at this. This is random type projects from Muoka Studio. Muoka? Could be just Mocha Studio. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Whoa, look at that. I want to look at all these. Nice. Nice. Oh, look at that one. That one's cool. Look at all these. This is great. Ooh, I love that one. It's got such a nice pop. Like, it's almost like that one. That one's intentionally watermelon, sort of chocolate. Like, they just look delicious. Wow, this is some really, really, really nicely designed type. I like it a lot. But you are specifically asking about the first one. The first one is the trickiest one. Look at these crazy colors. I feel like the only way to do this, any kind of colors like this, tends to be on a real, thin film or some really, really nice background. But I only try and tackle this during the live stream, so I've never done it in a lot more detail, where I've really tried to research it and figure out how something like this is made. And I don't have more information. I don't have like this deeper level of information to give. So it's always like, well, let's try thin film. And then it sort of works, is where we always end up on these type of questions. And that's what our limitations are in physical. And then it makes me think that maybe you can make something that looks really great here, like this, in Octane or in Arnold or in Redshift. And, you know, maybe there's just a really nice thin film shader in there, or the equivalent, that would give you something really nice looking. And I just have zero knowledge on it whatsoever. And yeah, Zach is saying to look up dispersion and Redshift under refraction. So yeah, like doing light dispersion so that as they refract through, it starts going in different directions. And I mean, I am so not an expert in Redshift that we can spend a minute tinkering in there, but no promises. So let's just go and create a couple of shapes for ourselves that we can be refracting. So a torus could probably give us some interesting shapes. In fact, why don't we make a torus? I'm going to put a twist on it. It's a torus with a twist. We'll put the twist on it, and I'm going to fit the parent and we'll spin that 180. That should be a funky shape. So we'll do that. And we can make a bit of text extruded. Let's make a helix is just a really quick way of doing it. I don't want to use a helix though. I want a nice swirly line, but there's no good way of making that. So we'll do that. And I'll grab the point and pull it up and grab the point and pull it up and grab the points and pull it up and grow and shrink and grow and up and shrink and grow. And I really don't like that too much, and now we say soft, and it's terrible. Scale it down to something slightly more reasonable. And we'll say soft again. Almost something. Soft. And then we'll not close it. Oh, it's not closed already. Where's the opening? They're too close to each other. They're tricking me. And then we'll sweep some text. Sweep and text. And we'll just make a nice old ampersand out of a nicer font. Futura is the Rocket Lasso font. Let's go ahead and put that in the sweep. Nice. So that's sweeping around. It gets a little weird over there. Not sure why. Grow, 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 grow. Invert, delete. Proof. Tricky stuff. Why is it breaking on the end there? Or is it? Oh, it's just twisting in itself. Interesting. Interesting. All right. Cool. Good enough. Good enough. Good enough. Zoom. I just have not passed through itself so much. Oh man, what is even happening here? All right, that was a little bit more trouble than it's worth, but whatever. We got some stuff to refract here. So with these the way they are, let's go and grab that, and we'll add some twists into it. Zoom. That's weird. That's super weird. Is that text not? I mean, we can say middle. That might spin a little better. Well, a little better. Okay, that just makes everything worse. So we're going to ignore that. Okay, anyway. I'm assuming we're going to need something to light and reflect, so we're going to make a Redshift dome light, and we're going to add a Grayscale Gorillas plugin, HDRI link, just so we can drop the dome map on there, and we're going to give ourselves something to reflect. And I've been enjoying the skies. I was requesting skies for a long time. So we'll do Sky 37 there, and let's go ahead and give this a quick save. Let's see, what did someone in the chat say? Yeah. What did you say? Yeah, just dispersion. So let's just say Redshift dispersion. Alrighty, so let's make a new Redshift material. One of these is, I'm just going to say material. I'm pretty sure there's a preset inside of the material for water or glass. There we go, glass. Excellent. So we don't have to go and completely build it from scratch. Let's go ahead and apply that. Let's make another boring Redshift material to apply to the ground. And let's just make sure that that is working so far by opening up Redshift render view, hitting go. And there we go, it's refracting quite nicely. And look how nice that looks already, man. And look how quick it is. Like, just imagine how long it takes to do in physical. It's insane what the third-party renderers have done for us. So there we go, we get this nice refraction. Look at all the stuff we're getting practically for free. All right, so now we need to go into our Redshift material here, and we need to look for dispersion. So we've got a refraction. I'm just going to click around a little bit, see if I can naturally find it. Well, there's dispersion right there. It's just a setting. So I have no idea what amount might do something, but oh, look at that. Colors are being introduced right away. So let's push that crazy style. Dispersion. Blink! Oh, that's interesting. Wow, okay. Smaller numbers have a bigger effect than bigger numbers. So it must be the equivalent of thin wall. Well, or like, yeah, the thin film. If you turn on thin walled, then that makes the entire thing act as if it's just like a bubble. But this dispersion seems to automatically introduce that color. It's linked to reflection right now. We can probably do some funky things by combining different index of refractions. And different levels of dispersion. But yeah, this is, at this point, look, it's just a slider. As we do the slider, we're introducing these rainbow colors, and we're getting that pretty much for free. And without, I don't even have to have any understanding over what's happening, and we're getting cool, colorful results out of that. So if you were to actually have some understanding of what that does, so we've got dispersion here, but potentially you can get some more interesting things if you change the dispersion over distance. Yeah, keep it low. And yeah, why don't we go real low? Yeah, oh, yeah, even that, like as I go lower and lower. So why don't we go the smallest possible number, 0, 0, 1. Oh, nope, so you need a little something. So 0.1 seemed to give us the strongest kind of rainbowy look. Yeah, that's interesting. And then you take that into Photoshop, crank up the vibrance, and you got yourself a stew. So yeah, I mean, man, that looks cool. But it's just a slider, so like we don't get any special credit for that. Now we do have dispersion here. I mean, there's always the possibility we could go into our shader graph and then feed in some sort of noise to modify that, which could get weird. Let's try that. I don't even know what happened, but I'm just curious if we can. Let's make a Redshift noise, and then we have our Redshift material. And if we go into somewhere, we're going to find our diffusion. So that's under refraction. Refraction transmission, which is here. Oh, does it not give us that? We have the IOR, refractive aberration. Is that what that one stands for? That's weird. Why is it giving us? I don't see a refractive aberration anywhere here, so I'm just curious what that is. Blink. Does that do anything? Doesn't look like it did anything. Weird stuff. Yeah, I thought maybe we could control different numbers in there by feeding it, but it doesn't seem like that's actually a parameter inside of that node, which is a little weird to me. Can you drag it in like that? Oh, it is refractive aberration. So dispersion is the name of it here, and I was like, well, refractive aberration sounds like the same idea, and as I dragged it over, it renamed it to that parameter, so those are the same ones. That's pretty funny. I'm glad I at least have a base level of understanding on this kind of stuff. So, like, it seems to have died. It did die there. It turned itself off. I'm not sure why. It didn't crash. It was still up. It just stopped running. So I'm not sure what was up with that. That's too bad. You missed a funny thing here. I was trying to figure out what our setting would be here underneath refraction and transmission, and there is no dispersion in here, but we did have refractive aberration. I was like, well, that sounds like the kind of thing that would be doing something similar. So I tried driving it. I was like, well, that doesn't seem to be the right parameter because it didn't do anything. So then I dragged this over to see if that would work in Redshift, and it does. But you'll see that dispersion is actually refractive aberration. Why are they named differently in the interface and in the node? That's so weird. But that plugging this in doesn't visually really seem to change much. And so I can't think of any way of making that more vibrant than it is already. But if we go back to our reference, I don't know, like that might literally be all we're really seeing in here. You take this image and we, just as the super duper quickest version here, taking a screenshot of that. Oh yeah, and our Photoshop crashed. We're having some crashing troubles today, everybody. Now I was doing a lot of rendering with Cinema earlier, so maybe it like ate up all the RAM and everything. I didn't restart, but still a little weird. I'll let that finish opening. Oh, there we go. did finish opening. But yeah, just by taking our image as simple as it is there in the Photoshop, if we were to just create a vibrance here and really crank up that vibrance, like you're going to really start getting those colors popping in a way that could account for a lot of the really fun color that we're seeing here. So yeah, you see these same kind of mirrored stripes, and we just get them there. So it's just a setting I literally never touched before, and pulling it up a little bit gives us a really nice, nice effect overall on it. So it could be as simple as that. So what makes these amazing, of course, is all of the great design in them. Like every single one of these is better than the last one. Oh, this one's my favorite. Man, I do not have a brain that does this kind of stuff. Like, who decided that, like, oh, let's do some splattery pokey dots behind it, and that's going to make it look cool? Because it does. It does look cool. Look at that. And even look at this patterning is super interesting. Like, none of these dots intersect with each other. So that makes me think that this is something like, if this was made in cinema, that you're actually, these are actually a series of clones being cloned to create this pattern, so that they're not intersecting with each other, like that kind of thing. Because in the material, they wouldn't be all randomly spaced out really nicely like that. And I don't see a single dot that's interacting with or bumping into another one. So yeah, always interesting details. And yeah, adding more Tobias, adding more lights in there, I definitely think would brighten it up. Adding in Redshift lights, which I'm once again not super familiar with, or going into our light here, if we were to grab one of the lights that is like way brighter in our HDR, then that could really brighten this thing up. And depending on the angle we're at, yeah, you can see the kind of bright light beams coming through, really going catching the illumination through it. And man, just that refraction is, look how quick, look how nice, like everything looks so quickly inside the third-party renderers. It's pretty great. I mean, I am glad I'm starting to learn them. This brighter light did not seem to help, though. I almost feel like we'd want something darker, something with heavy contrast might work better. So just for fun, I'm going to go to my old school favorite, which was Derelict 1, which gives us those overhead lights. And yeah, now we have darker areas and lighter areas and more things to refract. And then with a more colorful scene for it to refract, we're automatically getting a lot more color in it naturally. So, you know, that automatically goes a really long way. We can probably go into our dome light, and I don't know this, but we can probably find the setting here that will stop it from rendering. Yeah, I want it to affect all those. I just want it to be seen in the viewport. Dome light, shader graph. It's got to be here. Enable background. There we go. Yep. So look at that. Look at these colors. The colors, Duke. The colors. That's amazing. And it's just a slider. And it's just a renderer. Like, I don't know what the math is that's doing this, but it's really cool. And there's probably ways of feeding in dispersion where you can put different channels in it. So you could probably disperse the red, green, and blue in different ways and get some really artistic control over it. But that's not something I'm familiar with. So Derelict 5. Wait, which one? What's the name of it? Derelict 1. Yeah, that's my favorite HDR. It gives you such direct overhead lighting, but still really bright. So it just is really good for catching these kind of really heavy contrasts. So I'll give that one a quick save, and let's go see what we got next. Tobias is linking to an Instagram link. Hopefully it's for me, and hopefully Instagram is loading. Oh, is this just a... Oh, I think it's just this is just a MoGraph meme. Yeah, this is actually it's a meme Instagram. But yeah, if you're when you're designing, do you use a pen tool or do you use the magic wand? Let's see. Viking. Every time I use an align to spline tag on a camera, and the spline does a loop, or the camera freaks out. Oh, that's an excellent question. And I even have an answer for you. So there is something called gimbal lock that you will always run into. And we can actually show this very well using your exact example. And this happens all the time to people. So let's go ahead and make an align to spline. We're going to align our spline, our camera to our spline. I'm going to say tangential. And then you're going to see as our camera travels along, first of all, you see it's got this funky orientation right there. And then as we continue traveling along, there's going to be a certain point where the camera right there, flip. You see how it flips 180 degrees? And this has to do, it might have to do with gimbal lock, but it's just kind of the orientation. And as a general rule, the simple solution is a rail spline. I'll make a second circle with it outlined. I'll put the rail spline in, and it's going to force the camera to aim at that orientation. And now as we travel around, you can see that it doesn't flip anymore. The rail spline gives it an orientation, so it actually knows which way to look. Now, if you wanted it to be pointing up, well, what I typically do is you see that I like increasing the radius like that. An alternative we could have done is grab this and pull it directly off to one side, and then make that the rail spline. And then now you'll see it's always pointing on the inside. If I grab the rail spline and pull it on the opposite side, it'll always be pointing, I think, don't know this for sure, but it'll always be pointing on the outside successfully. But even along those lines, what I would typically do is just put the camera into a null, Alt-G, put that in a null, and then run this on, run the tag on the null, and now we can independently rotate our camera whichever way we want to. So now that would successfully travel around the outside, but if we wanted the camera to be looking left and right as it goes, I don't have anything easy on here. Why don't we just make a vibrate tag? Vibrate, and or have it vibrate the rotation. 30, 30, 30 is fine. Slow it down to 0.5. So now you can see that that can freely rotate around while our null is concerning itself with doing the traveling around. So at the time of 0, at the time of 90, and if we want to, we could select all the keyframes and set that to linear. And now that should be moving at a constant rate, and it's not going to pop or flop around anywhere. And now it can also randomly be rotating as well. Speed that up a little so we can see a little better. Yeah, so you can see that rotating around, aiming around. And all we really needed was a rail spline. Whee! Excellent question, though. I don't think that one deserves having a scene file saved. It's just the idea of using a rail spline. Does that kind of cover the question? Let's see, Carlos, how to put the camera inside the object, being it empty. What object are we talking about, Carlos? But in any case, Drake, you're interested in how to rig or jury rig a sequence where a emitter or X particles has an initial rate of 1 or 2, drops off body from above, drops them, taking that point. Oh, this is your question from a few weeks ago, and I still am not able to understand fully. You'd have to find some sort of footage. Find some sort of footage that is really close to what you're talking about, because it sounds like you want them to... Well, Drake, yes, reading it slowly, I might be able to get it. Reading out loud in a live stream is not the most exciting thing. Yeah, but there's too much ambiguity even the way you're asking it, because you say once the drop, in quotes, touches the bottom of your cube, it transforms into a liquid state. What does that mean? Does that mean it suddenly was a solid and suddenly bloop, it morphs into a liquid? Or does it mean that it's just like there's a liquid level on the bottom and it's moving upward a set amount every time a drop hits the bottom? Does it mean like in a single frame flash it's kind of faked and it's gone from one to another? There's a lot of ambiguity in the specifics there. Let's see, but we have another link to check out. 9 to 11 seconds in here. Coca-Cola contest from Corb. So let's see. Well, let's pause this for a second. Okay, we got a Coke on a pedestal. Blur! Whoa! I'm not sure what happened there. Oh, okay. I think I understand what's happening. Whoa! Neat. Cute. So I'm sure, I'm not hearing the audio, but I'm sure these are responding to certain tones. and each is doing their own thing. This is actually really straightforward to do some of the concept there. Really all we have to do is modify the model in some parametric way. So that could be a morph, it could be a million different things. I wonder if I still have the bottle from one of the earlier Rocket Lasso lives. There's a really cool model that we made. Let me just take a second, and I'm going to take a quick look here, see if I can find it, because we could just work from that if we do have it. So I'm going to try episode 1, scene files. Nope, oh, episode 1 was the paint. And episode 2 seems more like it might have been. Nope. Let's try episode 3. Let's check out episode 4. It was one of the early ones. Pipe Fun. Nope. If it's not in the next couple, then maybe it was pre-Rocket Lasso Live. Fleeting Tubes, Gravity, Lock, Bottle, Fruit Morph. Interesting. Thought we would have hit it by now. Yeah, Noodle Cut. This is definitely happening after that. Let me think. I don't want to. I wonder if I have any of the. Do we have any built-in Cinema 4D models we can work from? Presets, broadcast. No, not 3D objects. Yeah, maybe here. Celebration cookware. I would like to find something bottle-like, glassware. Oh, look at that. There we go. Beer mug. There we go. That'll work. Not that that would have been hard to make, but there we go. We've got a model to work from. Although this is not very even poly count. Let's go ahead and pull that material off for a second and you see what we got here. And the polygons are being spent where they need to be, but I'd like our poly count to be a little more even. Luckily, this is a parametric object, so we can go ahead and set this to uniform and probably even chill that out a little bit. And let's have this sweep not quite so many segments because, you know, we just don't need that many. Let's drop that down to 24 segments. And that can be even fewer there. Oh, now we start getting the point. All right, we'll put a few extra. But I'd like them to be approximately square. There we go. Okay, so that's our basic beer mug. Nothing terribly fancy there. But if it's already zeroed out there. Let's put in a couple different shapes in here so that we can modify it somehow. So let's go ahead and just put that into a null. I'm going to put a bulge in there and say fit the parent. It doesn't like that, so I'm going to put it down in here and say fit the parent. There we go. Now it matches. Pull it back out again. So this we can have go blurp and burp bulge in and out and make some cool shapes that way. And then what else can we do? We can put a bend. We could put a twist, although we won't see the twist very clearly. So I guess a bend would work pretty well. Bend will come no, the bend comes after the bulge. And then a taper, why not? Fit the parent, there we go. And that comes before, that can come before the bulge. Okay, so here's the thought. If we make this will be number 1. If we make a duplicate of that entire hierarchy, we'll hide the first for a second, and let's go ahead and do something funky with this one. Let's go ahead and taper it out, and we will bulge it in, and we will bend it like that. There we go. That's pretty fun, actually. So that is what happens on that shape. I'm going to visually hide our deformers. I don't want to see them. I just want our final model. So you can see that this is what we got going on. So with that in mind, all we have to do is make a MoGraph cloner, and we're going to put both of these inside of the cloner. So this could be doing any shape, any funky stuff, anything we want to do. Let's go ahead and put them side by side, down a row, and we'll make a couple extra. Okay, so that becomes one row of these. Now we can go ahead and set these to blend, and now you can see that we're actually slowly morphing from one shape to the other. So that by itself is pretty cool. We could take this one and bend it more or less, and let's even do that. Let's have that bend over so we get all that. There's a fun That's a fun, funky, transformy shape there. But we can change this, and let me see if I can remember. I'm always a little fuzzy on it. We are blending between them, but if we go to... Just give me a second, I'll remember. We need to... I thought it was weight. We don't want to play fixed, I don't think is it. It's not time. How do we... Fixed texture? No. Instance mode, multi-instance. But blend is correct. I know what it is. I know how to do this. I'm just blanking on the single setting somewhere. It's really not weight. It's like the only setting we have. Okay, well, we might have to do it via an effector. If I make a plane effector, don't affect the position, but let's go, okay, modify clone, there we go. So I'm gonna make a modify clone, and now you can see if I drag this number anywhere, and actually if we go -1, yeah, okay, so I'm gonna make one of them go -1. And now it is modified the clone, and they're all exactly the same. And now we can drive the rest of them, and that I might have to change that parameter. But if we go and we add in a random effector here, I'm going to tell this random effector that I want it to affect the modify clone. So you can see I've randomly modified 2 of those to randomly begin that morphing process, to blend between them. So by changing, we've got a min and a max here. I'm going to pull this up to 0. So now this can be anywhere from 0 up to the max. We can go to our, I guess there's no fall off in there, so we have to remap it, but there is no remapping. You know what? I shouldn't be, I should do this with a plane effector. Yeah, that makes more sense. I'm going to put a second plane effector, and the second plane effector is going to say that, yes, I can modify the clone to be in the final position. And instead of driving it with a random effector, we now use a plane effector and drive it with a random fall off. Big difference between those two concepts. I don't like seeing that in the viewport. Okay, so now what we have happening is this random field is outputting anywhere from 0 to 100% strength. And if we change the field type to something like noise, and we give that some animation speed, then we can just hit play, and now these will be randomly wiggling around, transforming from one mode to another. We could remap that more strongly by going into the random field, and we can remap this however we want. We could do a minimum here, so they always have to be a little bit in or out. We could go to our different shapes here. So we could go to not quadratic. Let's go to step. And now it can only be in one mode or the other. We could add some in-between steps here, and it can jump to a halfway point on them, which can start getting interesting here. You get like almost a stop motion-y vibe. Ding, 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 ding. Go to a curve, and this curve can be useful where we can really pull in the base. So a lot of the time, they're going to be a regular glass, but every once in a while, they can suddenly bend over, and we can pull this in a little bit more there. So we get that little transitional time, but you get burn, 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 burn. And so, yeah, just just 2 plane effectors morphing between these 2 shapes. So, and that's using a random field, but instead of a random field, we could turn that one off, and we could just make something as simple as a linear field, which is more what I think we saw in that little video. If we have our linear field traveling on Z+, first of all, you see the colors working. I don't actually want the color to be turned on, so we can turn that off. But our linear field, I could just grab it, and then they're all down and go... And yeah, it's as straightforward and simple as that. And what's so cool about this and the way that they're morphing is that we can just go back into the original one and change the morph however we want. We could taper these to be bigger and bulge them inward a little bit more, pinch it really thin. We have the bend even further. A nice even 180 might be good, but let's try 270 just to be goofy. Yeah, look at that. Now they can bend all the way over. So that, it just starts layering up, and it's really fun in the way that these kind of things can combine. And man, yeah, I can't even go into it, all the crazy ways that these types of things might end up combining. Pretty cool, though. And then, like I said, like right now we're driving this via these deformers, but we could have also built a morph. We could have put a pose morph on it and then driven that with a pose morph deformer, and that could be deforming via a pose morph slider traveling upward and downward between those two states. So a lot of stuff is pretty cool. Let's go ahead and give that one a quick save, and I think we have time for one more question. What do we even call that one? Modify clone, I guess. Back to the questions. Chattel Abo. What do you got? Ooh, that one's dangerous. I want to click the link, but it says medieval fantasy city generator. That's a dangerous thing. Oh, I've been on the site before because, you know, I've run D&D games and I always like generating maps. And I at one point was working really hard on making a city generator, or I was trying to make a generator for my maps, and I ended up being able to turn it a little bit into a tool. We never ended up getting to release it because I didn't get to finish it, but it had some pretty cool stuff. And yeah, this is going to generate, you know, completely procedurally and randomly generate different cities with different options. We click on options here, and you know, hatching lines, towers, buildings, is there water, and yeah, it's just going to randomly go through. So it's really cool. Fun things you can do, and even as you mouse over, you can see like the different, it's naming different neighborhoods, the temple, South District. Like, man, it's really cool. You were saying, how do you create a similar random set of buildings like this? Well, the problem is a lot of this is generating polygons and then randomly subdividing them afterward. I've done code that does certain things like this, but honestly, if I had a easy answer for that, I would have already been selling it as a tool, because this kind of stuff is really, really fun. The way, having said that, I'll give you, I mean, I don't have an automatic way of doing it, but there are some techniques that I found were pretty useful. The basic one being, imagine if you just fill a shape. Let's just make a nice end side here, and I'm going to put that into a loft. What am I doing? Make a loft, turn that into geometry, and if we turn on NB, you can see what we've got. I'm going to change that to be n-gons, make this editable, and now we've just got this one n-gon here. It's even facing the wrong direction. I'm going to hit UR to invert that. But if we use the knife tool here and we started doing some cuts in various ways, I could cut there, and we could cut like that, and then maybe this one will cut through there, and then that one will cut like that, and then here we'll do one more cut that way. Actually, I don't like the way that one traveled through the middle, so we'll travel to, oh, it doesn't want that midpoint, so let's just hit enter and escape. Whoa, that's weird. Okay, let's just do a series of single line cuts. Fine. Be like that. I've never gotten my head completely around the way the new knife tool works. But anyway, you can see I'm just doing some nice subdivisions here. So let's just say that's like our base geometry. So we can take that and hit and say I for inner extrude, and then do an inner extrude, turn off preserve groups, and now you can see I can pull that in, and now we've got like some neighborhoods. And I hit UP to split that off. I'm going to even hit delete to get rid of that. So now we've got roads, and now I've got like these little neighborhoods. And now I could once again grab the knife tool, and we could do some manual cuts if we wanted to. So K for knife, and we can go to individual ones and say, okay, chop that one, or chop that one, or chop that one. But we can also just right click and say subdivide, and now you can see we get those subdivisions, and I can subdivide again. And you know, some of these are, like this one was based on the cut I did, it was kind of triangular, so that's a little dangerous. I'm going to undo on that one. Let's subdivide, and I can see, well, it still makes triangles, whatever, I'm going to ignore it. So subdivide, and I can see we've got these smaller shapes, but now I could go and like select all, shrink my selection, invert my, well, like I could shrink the selection, hit delete, and or split them out, I guess, UP for that, delete, And now we've got these interior ones, so it's like the interior courtyard areas, and then you get these outer ones, and those become these outer potential little building shapes. You have to get a lot fancier if you wanted to get more detail on there. But even based on that, I could now select all these, hit the letter D for extrude, click and drag to do an extrusion on them. But we can turn off preserve groups and then start adding in some height variation here. And there we go. You can now see that we get some cute little varied heights on buildings. Delete the Fong tag. And now you've got, you know, some actual little buildings and roads, and you can just kind of go through here and start going step by step by step and adding in additional extra details. So I have tinkered a lot with this kind of stuff, building them myself or building little rigs. It can be really fun and really satisfying, but there's not a lot of super duper automatic ways of going nuts. I hope to maybe in the future have some fun stuff along those lines, but for right now, nothing immediately jumps to mind. But applying a couple materials, a couple fun little details on here. Even this, you know, and it really just keeps on going because we got this. But we can say, you know what? Let's split those roofs off. And then I still have the original ones, but now I can hit, we could randomly deselect some of these. So I'm going to erase out a bunch of them. And I hit I for inner extrude. And then we hit D for extrude. And now we can give some second floors to some of these. Or I can hit I for inner extrude, very carefully, and then do a D for extrude and go down a little bit. And now we get like these little, oh, actually, I guess we'd have to hit D for extrude to go up first, then I, then D. And now you can get these little, some of these have these little ledges on the roof, depending on how far you want that to go. And those all randomly were pushed up and down. And you start introducing all this extra little detail on them, and some of them can get extra subdivisions. I didn't select all these super, I guess there's a split off one. I should have been doing that extrusion on this. But if I grabbed a couple of those randomly, we could subdivide those and then randomly deselect some of them. And now some of these can get partial second floors. So, you know, well, once again, detail, you can just go and add and add and add and add. And we still have these roads going. So it's fun. I'm not going to bother saving this one either because this final result isn't much, but the techniques are really, really fun. Daryl, can you get fields in R19? No, you cannot. Fields are R20. Yeah, I mean, different greeblers can give you different... different greeblers could definitely give you different effects here overall. Pushing things, I would love to have pushed things further here. And like I said, I wrote 5,000 lines of code to do some really fancy stuff, but we ended up never being able to do anything with it. So who knows? But man, I am all about procedural generation of this kind of thing, like being able to parametrically generate things. Viking, how to dynamically rig trees. That seems unlikely. Let's see what we got here. It looks like this Instagram is still not running fully. Yeah, Instagram is not working on PC right now, so that link just does not work. Too bad. You're learning how to do that using MoGraph by feeding some buildings in as elements. Yeah, I mean, if we're going back to this building thing, you're going to end up with like a lot of intersections. There's no good way of stopping things from intersecting. That's one of the big challenges, because you see games like City Skylines, which I absolutely love, but we don't have any way of subdividing things in a very, very clean way. So you can see how, you know, if we had this original spline or any kind of road spline going, we can, on a road by road basis, potentially feed something through. But let me even put that into a new file. So you get something like this, and then you're like, okay, well, I want to have a series of buildings traveling around. So let me make a rectangle, and let's go ahead and make this really clean. I'm going to go 20 by 20. And we're going to put that into an extrude, so it pushes upward. Let's even just make it a square. And So you do something like that, and we say, okay, cool, we're going to clone it around, but we don't want it directly on the road, so we're going to put it into a null, and then I'm going to scoot it 20 units backwards. Cool. So we go into a cloner, and we put that into the cloner, and this is actually something I have spent a lot of time doing this kind of stuff, so I can speak with some authority on this. So you can see that we're traveling around. It looks like I guessed the orientation wrong. So this one shouldn't be -20 on Z, it should be -20 on X. And now you can see we are off to the side, and it is flipped upside down. So we could put a rail spline in there, or we can we reverse the spline? No. Oh, well, okay, turning on and off did it. Sounds weird. Oh, nope. Reverse. Okay, well, reversing the spline does do it. So you can see now that we're cloning buildings, boom, 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 off to the side. So they're a little bit away from the road. And we can increase the count and say, okay, as long as we keep our count even, then these are all working. But then imagine if you wanted some of these buildings to be bigger. If I were to copy that and hit T for scale and start scaling up and get a bigger building, there's nothing that stops it from intersecting with everything else near it. And yes, I mean, you can go and do the push apart, but the push apart in no way actually solves this problem in an intelligent way. This is a very, very brute force method. Let's do scale apart. It's a very brute force method, which is merely checking to see if something is in the radius of something else. So the fact that these are different sizes in no way is actually influencing if they're touching each other. So the push apart effector is just not helpful at all if you're trying to build this in some sort of accurate way. So once you started building up a collection of different size buildings that do different things, there's nothing to stop this from just straight up intersecting and colliding with itself. So if you're trying to have the buildings avoid each other, I've got nothing for you. There's no way of doing that. Now you could just straight up ignore it. I can go and change this to random, and now they're going to be randomly being generated along, and now you can see, okay, cool, now these are kind of like intersecting, but then it just becomes cooler looking buildings. And if that's neat to you, then boom, that automatically works. That's a fine method. And then this is like a cloner outside of street, and then we could copy it, and then we can go to transform, and we can flip it 180, and now we've got the inside of the street, and those will also be intersecting each other, and this corner will not be taken into account, so we get these weird angles colliding. And in general, maybe this being on the inside of the street, maybe we want slightly fewer, or what might be a good idea on both of them is to change the count to a step, so it's doing a one every certain number of steps. But once again, you don't know what size it's going to feed through, so you can't anticipate that. This is just going to keep a slightly more even scale going around. So you can see that, you know, we get those breaks on the corners, but not in between. We might want to go more or less, but this could go a long way. Like that might look neat, and you're like, okay, cool, I don't mind the intersections. Like, you know, you can go ahead and turn on the edges and be like, okay, I can work with that, or add in some random effectors and let those scale up a little. Keep in mind that we're pivoting from a very specific spot, so doing some scaling here. In fact, we don't even need uniform scale. We can say it can go back randomly, go up randomly, go down randomly. And so all those are happening. We just don't have any intelligence built in. It's a very brute method, but we still have a fairly effective road that seems to be traveling through there all right as a general rule. So yeah, what can I tell you? There's no smart way right now of automatically doing that. There's no dynamic detection of anything. There's no built-in scale here. There's no push-apart effector that has a different clones have different scales variable. Wish there was, but there's not. Echo, or is it just Eka 6? I'm not sure. But how would you do the ground effect shown in this video? Ground effect. Woo! I think I've literally had this question before in the old Ask GSG days. Yep, we literally had seen this one before. I wonder if there's a... There's a lot of, well, first of all, this is Atoms for Peace Before Your Eyes, so it seems to be a music video of some sort. The I'm going to jump through the yeah, until we see a close one. Now, I mean, one of the big questions is, are these perfectly vertical or not? And if they are, like, you could just do it with some straight up displacement if you subdivide something enough. You could do it by intersecting some noises, potentially. Doing massive subdivisions, I'm even curious. No, I don't know the Redshift well enough to jump into that very blindly. Let me think if there's any novel approaches I have to this that are not the same as what I've done in the past. Because just throwing polygons at something is a very dangerous road. But then when it comes to third-party rendering, maybe it could handle throwing a lot of polygons at something. It could look really good. My main question is, and I am actually kind of curious to try this in Redshift. It might be funky. You know what, why not? Let's, we might hit a dead end right away. I am not an expert. And if anybody has a very simple, clear, concise explanation of something I'm doing weird, yes, Apple, Merc does have something he's doing in there along those lines, but that spot was made way before that, so that was definitely not using his tool. I'm going to do, anyway, I'm going to do something in Redshift, and if I'm doing something blatantly wrong, you can very easily and concisely point me in the right direction. Feel free to do so, but if it's a big complicated answer, then I'm just going to plow through anyway. But what I'm going to do is just make a material here, and just for fun, why don't we load in one of Chad's everyday material collection materials to give us a base. So I'm going to make a nice wood material, and let's pull in this caramel oak. That seems nice. We'll throw that on. It's loading in, apparently. These are giant materials, so I guess that might take a second to load. We'll apply it, and yeah, we actually get it. Actually, that one has planks in it. I don't want planks. Yeah, it says plank right there. Plank, plank, plank. Plank. I don't want planks. No plank. Dark oak. There we go. I'll do that one. I'm going to just hold down Alt, so I replace the existing one. There we go. That's all I wanted. And here's my thought. We are going to heavily subdivide this in Redshift. So we're going to need a Redshift render view. And hopefully there's some sort of default light. Yeah, we can see that fine. I don't care about lighting right now. We're going to modify this material and add a Redshift object tag to actually do subdivisions. Subdivisions are very, very different in Redshift than they are in vanilla Cinema. We're going to go and edit our shader graph here. And here's the materials that Chad had put together. But we're just going to go ahead and make a nice, simple noise. I can't wait until hopefully one day Redshift gets real Cinema 4D noises in there. But in any case, we've got our material. I'm going to create a displacement node. We're going to feed this noise into our texture, and we're going to output that into the output into the displacement. So that should now start displacing based on the noise. But you know what? I don't know what that noise looks like. So I'm going to feed our noise into our color channel, so I can see exactly what our scale is. I need to make some layouts which are a little more friendly. But there's what that noise is currently looking like. So let's go ahead and change our parameters here. Let me try and make a nicer viewport here for you to see. I'm going to modify this noise to, we got fractal turbulence. Let's try turbulence. Whoa, no, let's go back to fractal. I'm going to drop our complexity down. Yeah, there we go. Now it's kind of more like a generic Perlin noise. We have amplitude, which should be the height, which should make it more contrasty, but I don't really think that's what we end up getting. Yeah, it's not. And we got the scale. We probably want the scale to be bigger. And so if you want the scale to be bigger, of course you make the number smaller, because that makes sense. No, it doesn't. It's the total opposite, but whatever. I'm going to make these smaller. There we go. Get these noises. Now, what we need to do is probably clamp these somehow, and that's where I'm going to get a little lost. Is there any kind of posterizer? Nope, there's not. So yeah, so now we're getting these colors. So how do we posterize this? There is no posterize. So that means we probably need to do some sort of utility or we've probably got to do math, honestly. Vector math. Or clamping. Oh man, I don't have the knowledge to do this mathematically. I could totally do it, but it would take me like 10 or 20 or 30 minutes of tinkering to actually build a posterizer out of the math nodes. Because we could modulo it, but then you need to take the remainder and add that back in again, and that I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that. We can try. I'm just going to click on here. I just want to visually see if we get anything interesting right away. Modulo instantly went to black, but now we need to. This is going from black to white, so all of them go even. So I'm going to put to 0.1, 0.1, 0.1. And visually, I'm almost getting nothing from it. So let's try 0.5. 0.5, 0.5. Honestly, I don't even know how the modulo works in Redshift. So to tell you the truth, we probably... Oh, that's a vector multiply. I accidentally dragged it around. Null out. That explained why that is behaving oddly. Put that in there. And if I put this to 0.5, then I would think that we're going to see 2 stripes. Yeah. So we get something like that. So if we do 0.1, then we're going to get 10 stripes because it's 1/10 of the amount. And now it's going to... oh, okay. So it would be 10 stripes, but we don't... Our color range isn't going all the way from 0 to 1. So we get these really interesting loops, but we need to clamp it at that level. And that is definitely not what's happening. Although we might be able to take this and add it on top of the existing one. So we could take the base vector and then add that one on. And then with those adding together, we might get something slightly more visually interesting where it starts going up higher, but I still feel like it goes darker, lighter, darker, lighter. So that is slightly untrustworthy. I really, really love modulos, but we'd have to increase the initial contrast of this noise and start layering that stuff up. Having said that, I think this gives us enough information to fake a displacement really quickly. So let's just say this is already outputting into the displacement channel. So now we need to tell Redshift that's actually able to displace a little bit. So let's go ahead and grab this object. I'm going to add a Redshift object tag. We're going to go to geometry. I'm going to turn on that, and I'm going to override, or I'm going to enable this tessellation, which is just subdivisions. And that's going to start adding in a whole bunch of subdivisions. And then we have our displacement, and we actually need to turn that on to actually start displacing. Now, right now, we have a displacement, maximum displacement, which we need to be way higher. I'm going to jump it way up to like 155, and that's where it would naturally clamp. But we need to go into our material and also tell our displacement that it should be going way up to, say, 55. And let's see if that actually does something. And it's not yet, which might mean I have to make this editable. Apparently not. So let's make it uneditable. And now we also have our displacement scale. I'm going to turn off our auto bump mapping. I'm going to crank up our displacement scale as well. That visually kind of looks like something happened, but I don't trust it. Yeah, it still looks flat. It looks like the entire thing jumped up. Now we are outputting the original color, so I need to take this funky additive one. Let's see if that does something a little bit more interesting. Honestly, no, it does not. Let's also have the range go from, that's the scale. I want the range to go from -1 to 1, so this should be more centered. But even that doesn't seem to be doing it. Does this need to be made editable? Okay, boom. Okay, editable. Now it is successfully displacing at least. And now we have to deal with the number of subdivisions. I'm going to lower these edges to be smaller. And now we get more. And now you can see that our modulo here is definitely not... how do we view frame all? F. Yeah, the modulo is not the same as posterize. And I really, really want to posterize. So that's too bad. That's true. I have no idea how to pronounce her name. You got, yeah, I don't know. Um, I'm just going to say Nazio. I could put the noise in a ramp node. That's true. I could put the noise into a ramp. Is a good idea. So we get our ramp, and then we can feed the noise in as the input, and then we get that, and then we could make the ramp do things. Now, but I mean, that's a very manual process. We could do it, and it's better than what we're currently doing, for sure. Let's temporarily disable that displacement. So now we're ramping that, and we can add a bunch of additional colors. Vertical source auto. I think that just feeding in that way should work. Well, let's see. We should be able to invert that and see the opposite if it's working. Yeah. So, but how do we step this? Well, we can just start making all the colors in between. Like that. And then we can select them all, which is no easy feat. How do we actually select the first one? Hold on, shift grab. I find these to be really finicky. There we go. I can set those to step mode now, and now we're going to get step, 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 and now you can actually see we're getting those steps, which is cool. I mean, that's giving us the effect a lot more. Also, like I said, our original input was not very powerful. So I would kind of like to remap that. I'm really sad that there's no range map. Oh, wait, no, we do have them. There's the remap. It's under the color tab. So we have a bias, but if I push that, oh, it can't go down. So we're just not hitting the peaks there. I guess we have this bias, and if we start pushing this bias up, we're going to hit more contrast? Nope. No. Well, that's okay. Well, still very strange. We're just not very unlikely at the peaks. I could feed this into two ramps. We could probably just do a color correct. So I'm going to search for correct. So we got our color correct. Feed the noise into that one, and then up into that one. And now we got that. I can start increasing our contrast, which is going to introduce more of our individual levels. So you can see them start to emerge from different parts. So anyway, now we've got that going. So that's actually kind of something. So now we can feed that into our displacement, and now we can get that to be the texture and then spit that out into our displacement, and there we go. Now we're going to start getting that happening. What do we got? Why are we only getting two heights there? That is the same material coming out from our ramp. Displacement 55, ramp anywhere from 0 to 1 is going to -1 to 1. Makes perfect sense. And then we're getting displaced. But, oh, I gotta stop doing that. Why are we only seeing two levels? And why is the mapping so dang different? Maybe it's a three-dimensional noise. Is that a setting we can change? Nope. Object position, vertex attribute. Didn't change anything I could see. Weird. We have to change the min, max, up and down and the displacement. So you're saying that I need to crank these up more to do it? Like, wouldn't changing scale have done that? No, that didn't do anything. Yeah, okay, well, you know, we're already hitting the wall of my knowledge in Redshift. I knew how to turn on displacement, and that's where I've gotten to so far. But we've already got really big displacement. We've already got all this displacement scale, and it is not giving us those individual levels, which makes me think we're going out of the clamped range for what those are. But well, okay. Well, there, I just was clicking around, and I grabbed my scale, and I dropped it down to 1. And now that seemed to do something. Now if we push these further, does that? Nope, that seems to make it worse. But that might now have to do with what our displacement is available to do. So we can jump that to 55. Displacement scale is just going to be the overall. These two settings are weird to me. But anyway, we've actually got the levels going now, which is something. But like the subdivisions are, you know, still quite visible. These are very, very visible subdivisions. So we can keep on lowering our edge length, and it's going to keep on making those smoother and smoother. But we're going to get diminishing returns as it goes. And then we even have this maximum subdivisions, which we might need to keep on raising up to make sure that we are within that range. Don't want to go too far. I'm going to keep on cutting this number in half but visually I'm not seeing any difference now, so we might have hit that peak again. Yeah, oh dear, okay, I went too far. So yeah, I mean, honestly, this is not, it's not working any better here in Redshift than it does in Cinema. We're still getting these pretty harsh edges. Now, I mean, of course, we're getting this calculation incredibly quickly, all things considered. You can see as I move around, like, it's like, boom, okay, got it. Like, that would take a really, really long time in Cinema. Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think Octane is the one that has like this really magical type of displacement where it just does such a great job pretty much automatically. Um, So yeah, just had to do a ton of displacements here. And just for clarity, something I've definitely found to be useful is we can create a wireframe. And this wireframe will just render all the polygons, and we can feed that to the diffuse color, and now we can actually see the poly count on here. So if I zoom up, you're going to see that, let's see. Oh, you can see there are so many teeny tiny little subdivisions here all over the place trying to create the displacement. So yeah, we're just not getting that for free at all. So we'd probably have to give this a little bit of smoothness on it in order to make it so that they can blend a little bit smoother. And then we're back in all the same problems that Cinema has. So not a great solution. Interesting though. I mean, it worked. And we sort of got it working there. I still don't have an intuitive understanding. I don't understand why the scale needed to be 0 and we needed to change the range, but that made all the difference in the world. I'll save this one, although I don't think there's too much interesting in it. We're already at 417. Trying to think. I mean, I would have loved to have made that one look a little bit better, especially, you know, I didn't even do it, but if we had the if we fed the original wooden material back through there, then hopefully that would displace and look really nice on the displaced thing. I mean, I don't think it's going to look great, but you know, it's something. You get, you know, this wooden material displaced, but yeah, these edges are just terrible. They're completely destroying us. Yeah, tricky. Let's see. Well, Drake, you put together a really quick thing for me to check out. We're already over time, but I would like to see. So this is what you are. Well, you just want those two. I continue to be a little bit confused. I know you've got this nice visual put together for me, but you want those to turn into additional surface area, like if there's supposed to be a splash or they're supposed to morph into it. So you've already got displacing a little bit, and I did an entire tutorial back in the day for doing this type of displacement and getting the shape going. But like at a certain point, wouldn't you just take what you're doing there and turn it to a volume? Like, isn't that the solution? Like, there's no automatic. I mean, mathematically, I guess you could calculate volumes, but wouldn't it be isn't that conceptually? And you tell me where I'm wrong here. If I were to make a rectangle, we're going to just do this from the 0 ground plane again. Extrude. Well, let's extrude those up 50 units. And the basic idea here being, if we make, what's the best way to do it visually? Because we're going to be faking it, so this might be fun. What's the best way? Actually, okay, yeah, this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to make a, it's not straightforward, but it's a nice simple rig. Let's go ahead and make a straight line, and we're going to make it 0 and 0. And then we're going to make it taller, 1,000. And then I'm going to make a sphere, and we're going to clone onto it, and let's make our radius 25, and I'm going to clone onto an object, and the object will be the helix, and then we can set a rate. So I'm going to do a rate on here and hit play, and now they're traveling. I want them to go backwards, so I'll say negative rate ding, 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 ding. So they're traveling downward. But what's cool about this rig is as soon as they go down in the ground, they're actually hitting the bottom and then jumping back up to the top. And if I wanted to make this super precise, I could jump this up 25 units on the helix spline. So if we type in 25 there, it's going to jump up that little bit. And now these are going to sink in. And it just looks like we have this infinite flow of them going down. And then what's cool about this rig is now we can go and add a random effector. And yeah, and I don't want to go random on Y, but we can push these out, you know, how far? I don't know. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4. Nope, too much. 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And now we have this endlessly falling. Oh, apparently Y is fine, but Z is not. Yeah, there we go. So now, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So now we just get this endlessly falling cascade of spheres falling in, which is fun. And the basic idea here for me would just be that we would, well, I'm going to use signal because it's going to be the quick way of doing it, but I'm going to drive this movement vector on here. So it starts out at 50, but I'm going to say I want it to start at 50, but then go up to 100. So now we should see this growing. So it's going to go up. And whatever amount we want to go up. So let's go to 60, which is less. Remember that transition be relatively quick. And how often are these striking the ground? That's an important variable here. How many clones do we have? We have 10, and the rate is -19. Oh, man, I don't know what the math on this is. 10, 25, 1/5 of our timeline, 1/5 of a second. These are 3 seconds. I don't even know. I'm just going to guess. So these probably need to go. Let's see. I'm going to just calculate. So we've got 1 there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, 15. Every 15 seconds, it needs to suddenly grow that amount. Bloop. And now I'm going to set this to additive. So now hopefully it's going to go bloop, 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 bloop. And every time it's going up higher and higher and higher. And then, so that you've got your drops of water going in, and then we make our our geometry builder and our geometry mesher, and we will just drop both of those into the builder and then both into the mesher. We'll keep it nice and low poly here, and hit play, and then we get blob, 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 and then this is just going to keep on raising up as blobs. So, like I said, I feel like I'm missing something with your descriptions, but based on what you're saying, where you just want a drop to transform into the raising level, that's all I can get from it. I like that. Everybody's getting lots of questions here at the end. Let me see if any seem particularly intriguing. Espresso question. Is there a way to repeat a complicated espresso rig on multiple objects without copying the espresso tag over and over again? Yeah, iteration concept. Confusing part is when there's multiple objects via iteration, and at the end, another set of multiple objects should be affected. I don't have a super great answer for that. Essentially, you're kind of answering the question yourself there, which is, yeah, if you make a complicated espresso rig, can you avoid copying the espresso rig again and again? You just want one of the rigs, and yeah, then it turns into usually iteration, where you can be feeding things through like an object list. Tends to be a pretty good way. And we don't have a specific example here, so it's going to be hard to conceive of one. But making feeding a whole bunch through a list, you can make an object list and drag in a bunch of objects and have it affect it in some way, and then make a second object list and feed it through that one, have it iterate through that one as well. So building it all in one espresso rig is probably a good idea, because what happens is you end up making a change to one espresso rig, which means you need to make the change on the second espresso rig, but that second one had custom things because it's feeding the custom objects as well. So building it on the one big one is a better idea, and doing it via iteration is a good way to do it. Blurp, blurp, blurp. Now I'm going to give this one a quick save. Blurp. Ba, 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 ba. Viking, you have the link to dynamic tree rig. Let's go ahead and give it a quick look. Before I do, I'm going to do a quick shout out right here for the Patreon that I have set up. This live stream is brought to you by all the supporters on Patreon. Thank you so much, everybody, for supporting the stream, and it makes it so I can do this every week and make more tutorials. I want to do a special shout out to the Great Wanderer Studios, who's a super supporter on Rocket Lasso's Patreon. And I'm just going to click this quick little ad here, and I'll be right back, and we'll do the last one. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me here. Yay! So yeah, if you're not already familiar with the perks and whatnot, if you're watching on Twitch, just below there's a link over on Patreon. You can see if anything on there is neat for you. You can get some scene files and whatnot, so that hopefully is some good incentive. And there's a bonus stream that happens every Thursday, if you're at the technician level or above. But in any case, let's go ahead and click on this one last link to the YouTube link of the tree question. Whoa! Boom! Look at that. That's super crazy. Look at that. Whoa, I like that explosion too. This is pretty, the tutorial I'm going to be releasing is doing some stuff along these lines, actually. It's going to be a collapsing ground, but in a pretty art directable way. So that is pretty cool. Who made this? Is that who made it? The MPG Core. But that's pretty cool. I love that striking the ground and the way they are making that fly up in the air. Probably some wind in the effector where it's being flung up. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty curious on that. But in any case, that's not your question. You had a very specific question on these trees. Is that the only part? Boom, shaking. So you're asking about a quick way of rigging trees. I mean, I guess we need a tree example. It's really cool, though. We need a example of the... depending on the model is going to highly change the way I would approach it. The motion that was happening there was very straightforward, so there are potentially opportunities to do it in a relatively straightforward way. But I'm not, well, presumably you could, there's a single tree. You rig up one tree. Let's see if we can find a still. So you could, if this is all the same tree again and again and again, just scaled, or if you're going, crazy, you could make 2 or 3 of them. Individually, you'd have to select a whole series of branches and then associate them with, probably with just, if you're going to do the simplest way, just associate them with a joint, which is not that difficult. So let's go ahead and just do the joint setup really quick. But I don't have an example tree to go and do it by, but I could I don't think it'd be that hard if you can select all of them. So let's just make what I consider to be the complicated part, honestly, and that's just come on, brain. Joints. We're going to make a series of joints. So we're going to make a single joint here. We're going to make a child. Let's going to go ahead and pull that out 100 units and make a child. And let's point that upward. So let's just say like the trunk of our tree just goes really high. So we're going to move that up. Let's go 300 units total. And then you get your first branch. So actually this tree would continue. So it's like, okay, there's going to be some, that's where one branch is. This is where some more are. But honestly, I don't even think we have to go that far. That is a branch right there. So let's just say there's a branch going right there. And then there's another unrelated branch, which is over here. And then you also have, so you have various branches over. But I got to keep in mind that we can't pivot from there. So I actually have to, I'm going to make a duplicate of this one as itself as a child, and then we'll make a child there. And now that one, we can be arbitrary there. We can copy that one, and then this one I can go and move that one up in the air, and then wherever that second branch goes. So you just go and do this for everywhere that there's a branch, and you just make sure you're kind of following all of those. And based on what we saw in that the nice little short there, is we don't need to worry about every tiny little sub branch. You can if you want, but that animation I don't think would call for a very, very complicated series of additional ones. But just saying, if you wanted to, you could also make longer joint chains here that could actually be following further along. But having done that, if we were to just, if each of those is one of the branches, then we could really easily bind these to those branches by selecting all those polygons, selecting these branches and say bind to that one. And then here, I'm pretty sure we can just add in let's just add in, we'll just do it on one of them and see if it works. We're going to add on an IK joint right there. And I'm going to say that it ends right here. There's no goal, none of this stuff. And all I really care about is dynamics. So let's enable the dynamics. And let's see if the first object can be affected, because we might need this to be a longer joint chain for that to work. I'm not sure, but the basic idea would be, that's not triggering yet. So does it need a goal to be able to do that? I don't think it would, but you never know. It's still not going. So let's go ahead and give it another joint on there. Just I want to see how far we have to go until we actually see an effect. Oh yeah, and I had a goal here, so that kind of breaks that. There we go. Well, let's see. That seems to do something now. So if we were to grab our dynamics and really go easy on the stiffness, is there gravity? Forces, gravity. Don't worry about gravity. So there's no gravity. So this just cares about being in any given position. So if suddenly there was an explosion and this went boom, well, it's not. Maybe me dragging it is forcing a refresh. In fact, I think that's a thing. If you go to dynamics, it has continuous update. I'm going to turn that off, and let's see. There we go. So now you can see when I go boom, you can see there's actually like a little bit of a reaction there. And you can, with different settings, we could go and put a bunch of drag on there. And with any luck, if that suddenly shot up and went down, it's going to get left behind. So you can get this very straightforward type of rig where you can start getting reaction. Position hold, rotation hold, that might be why it's trying to get back quickly. Okay, well, that behavior's a little strange. Is it position hold or rotation that did that? Apparently it's position, so let's go easy on the rotation. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, so the position hold, I don't know, it's trying to get back to its position, but we might need there to be some reasonable deformations on there. So designing one, I shouldn't have made all these other branches until we had one working. We could copy and paste it a bunch of times. But you can hopefully see that we can just, we could, if this is playing, we can animate that to go up and down and get it to lag behind. And honestly, making a very short joint chain would be a good idea. That should be what we did in the beginning, honestly. Let's get rid of all those. And let's make that one be 100 away. And let's just make a whole chain of them, grab all of them, and we'll make all of these be 100 units away. Boom, we get a joint chain, and then we go and we take this one and we'll zero it out. Yeah. Let's keep it nice and simple. So let's just say that's one of our branches. And then we're going to go ahead and add a character, IK chain. We're going to make sure that it's going to the end point. And then if we hit play, nothing happens. But if we turn on dynamics, and it should go floop and flop over, we can say no continuous update, and we can get rid of gravity. So now it's just trying to stay straight there. But now if I were to move it up and down, you see we're going to get this nice overlapping animation. So if there suddenly was an explosion where this shot up and went down, you're going to get that little flapping automatic overlaying up, motion. It's constantly trying to get back to its original position, and without any gravity, then it's doing a fine job of returning to its original position. So binding this to one of the branches would be pretty trivially easy, and you don't even need the root. You could just be like, that's one branch. Like, you can even just say null, and you call this tree rig, and then all you do is put this one joint wherever. Let's see. So that's where the tree is. I don't have the happy model toolbox here. I wonder if we have something inside of like broadcast. We had all the 3D objects. Do we have anything? Vegetables? Is there broccoli? No, sadly not. Yeah, I don't have a tree. But okay. What's the quickest? We'll use a figure. There we go. So there's our figure. So let's just say like that's a branch, and this head is a branch. So we have our pivot in the same place that the tree is. So now we can just grab this one rig, and I'm going to move it to wherever I need to. So let's go ahead and move it directly to his elbow. Oops. Oh, that's interesting. We might have to turn off dynamic while we're establishing where it goes. So I'm going to move that there. And let's go ahead and rotate that to the end point. I'm going to hit T for scale and scale it so it just matches the arm. And now let's go ahead and duplicate that entire rig and move it to the opposite position. And I'm going to spin it around. And now let's go over here, and they're both too low. We'll grab those, pull them both up into the air. And let's make one more. And this one we're going to move into his head. And we're going to go to a front view. And move it up to his neck. R for rotate. Let's spin that up. In fact, we could probably zero that out. So we'll say 90, 90, nice and clean. And then T for scale again. And even with it being really long, that's fine. We can also delete out additional joints by trying to do it as quick as possible. So then there we go. We just have 3 different series of joints, so we can have those be bonding to different parts of the mesh. If I were to grab his mesh, I'm going to put in a connect object and make it editable so it's all welded down into a single one. And it can get a little, let's see, I don't want to lose it. But my thought is, what if I'm going to make one final joint here, but I don't want the tag. I just want these 2 joints right here. Because what I want to do is just grab their entire character and grab those 2 joints and bind the entire thing to that. So if I said character command bind, then now what should have happened is we've automatically linked everything to just this one joint. The entire thing is on that. So wherever this joint goes, everything goes. Okay, that's all good. But now we can go in and start adding in our additional joints. So I might pop that out to be its own manager. And let's go ahead. I haven't done this in a while, but if we drag these additional joints in there, grab those, and grab our character, there should be some sort of, how do we pop open the, here's the weight tool. There's a brush. Or do we invert everything else? Let me think. It's not complicated. I just don't have the steps in my head at this moment. I want to essentially automatically bind these again. I thought there's a way to do it. Because right now they're not bound. Somebody's saying shift-click the vertex map. I mean, that's not a vertex map for one. That's the weight manager. Although I just shift-clicked and double-clicked the weight manager, and then that popped open, I think, the weight manager I was actually looking for. So thank you for the shortcut. I was going to go pop that open manually, but now we have auto weight. So if I select, I don't know if it's only based on the joints I select, but what I want to do is select all those new ones we just added in. Apparently I added the ones in for his head, but if I grab those, and then orange is not it, so these are the ones. We should have named them. But if I select those, my hope is if we hit calculate, then it bound everything. We can say selected, there we go, look, selected points. Nice, that's what we want. So if this was a tree branch, remember I was saying, if it's the tree branch, you would select all the branches you want. We select those. I'm going to shift click and turn them into points. So now we can say selected points only. So now, based on the weights we currently have selected, which are those, we can say auto weight, and now that has gotten colorized based on that. And now we can go ahead and kind of do it on all of them. So let's go ahead and go to joints and add in our other cluster here. Apparently we can't apply it via that, so let's go ahead and pop that one out again. And let's go ahead and drag in these joints, and now those have been added as well. It'd probably be a good idea to rename that one. Let's just start with X and end with X. And then we can go into these and select those, and now we can see where those live and the colors that they are. So once again, we want the selected points. So here you would be selecting your tree. You grab all the leaves and all the branches of that relevant part, select them, if it's our one mesh, it wouldn't work, but I hit UW, and I'm going to convert it to points, holding down Shift. And now we can, again, hit Calculate, and now that arm has been bound exactly to those. Very nice. And we'll just do the step one last time. And like I said, this is a little bit of a pain now, but if you only had to do it one time on one tree, then this isn't that bad, actually. So now that's in there. We need to just do, we'll just finish off our process here. Let's go ahead and select these, UW, hold down Shift, and then we will go into joints and make sure we have everything below X selected, auto weight. Nice. And now let's just make sure that our original one, our original one is still controlling everything else. Perfect, perfect. And then usually the last thing I do is select everything. Actually, let's not, well, I would want to do it on a joint by joint basis. The head is fine, but usually I like blurring these, so I'd grab all these, and we can go to mode, joints, weights, commands. Here, we go to commands, and I'm going to say apply selected. We can say smooth, and I'm going to say apply selected, and it's going to blur all of them, and you just get a smoother transition between them. And I would do them in the clusters of relevant joints. So we grab that, and then I can say apply selected, and I smooth it out twice. It should just make it a little smoother. So anyway, we didn't check how well these were wiggling, but with any luck, if we hit play, well, now we should be able to grab these and enable the dynamics again. And you see there's that little pop right there when it's trying to initialize them. But we should probably save this. Boom. Now we should be able to hit play, and now we can go boom. Oh, no, let me grab the rig and go wee, noodly arms. So, yeah, that's working. That's working well. There's a lot of joints in a very short distance on the head-based one. Renaming that head would probably be a good idea. But we can go into that one and go to the dynamics and increase the strength. We can grab the drag on all of them, add a lot more drag, the rotation hold, the curves and the forces. There's a lot of different settings in here that would enable making these a little bit more detailed, a little more controllable. But in any case, we can now have the tree explode upward and react and slowly return, or more quickly return. And hopefully you saw there that if you're doing this kind of basic rigging, it's not that complicated. Like, we set up that very basic thing, and then we just bind different parts to it with the auto tools and smooth them out a little bit. And it's not amazing, but that's not bad for how quickly we just did it. The head definitely needs to be chilled out. Honestly, it probably should have had the same number of joints as everything else did, so just shrinking that down was a bad idea. We should have just chopped that down like 2 or 3 joints, would have been good. But yeah, rotation hold might be good. I'm not sure what is the setting. Yeah, rotation hold is brutal. But position hold, yeah, I'm not sure what setting. We can change the way these are applied, but I think that is going to officially wrap this one up as our little tree character flies away. Goodbye, everyone. So, yeah, I mean, that was fun. That was a weird one. But it's always fun being able to sneak in a little bit of riggings along the way every once in a while. So we'll give that a save. Let's see. Once again, thank you, everyone, for supporting on Patreon. Thank you, everyone, for coming in here and asking questions. I couldn't do it if there weren't fun questions to answer. Yeah, it's cool that was the final question, or seeing those explosions there, because let's see if I have Let me see if I can pull up a little preview for you of the upcoming tutorial. I'm still putting on some tweaks here, but where is it? Where is it? Tutorial, dynamics, breaking ground, renders, finals. Here we go. So here is a quick render of some of the results of what the tutorial gets you through. So this is all built in the tutorial. So you get this nice collapsing, the secondary stuff, the chunks falling away, some displacement going, the cracks revealing. You can see we've got these extra cracks anticipating, chunks randomly moving up and down. And the fun part about this is these chunks are not dynamic at all. None of these chunks are dynamic. There are dynamics running, but the dynamics are running on the ground and not on these chunks. So there's a lot of really fun info in there, but it looks like the tutorial is going to be like 2.5 hours long to get through all of these parts. So it's not trivial stuff. But I am quite pleased. I think that looks pretty cool. I'm still doing a couple little tweaks on it, but yeah, that should hopefully be out sometime next week. So just a little preview of what you should be seeing soon. So I'm excited for that one. That will wrap this up. Thank you again, everybody, and I'll see you for the secret stream tomorrow if you're following on Patreon, and I'll see you next week, if not on the next Rocket Lasso Live. So thank you, everybody, and I'll see you later. And on the Slack, don't forget, go join the Rocket Lasso Slack channel by going to rocketlassoslack.com, where you can continue the conversation, ask questions, people help out, cool projects, all sorts of good stuff. So, yeah, that will do it. Bye-bye, everybody. See ya.